All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Hidden Path. You're not on the beaten path; you're on the hidden path with Carbon Mike. We got a extraordinary show here for you today. We apologize about yesterday. We wasn't on the air yesterday. That's why we are on the air today. Yesterday it was a little personal day for me, so that's the reason why me and Mr. Carbon Mike himself wasn't on the air. But we're back and better than ever. We got a few topics to talk about. Iran is back in the news. Also, the New York Times is also in the news. And also, Lindsey Graham is in the news, but not for the reasons that I'm sure his family wants him to be. But let's start off talking about Iran. But before we do that, let's say what's up to our gracious host, Mr. Carbon Mike. How you doing, man?
I'm very well, brother. You, in fact, are the gracious host. In fact,
no, I'm the producer. You the host.
Oh, yeah? Is that how it is right now?
Yeah, that's how it is. I'm the producer.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, it's always good. It's always good to be here with you, my brother. And to chop it up, about what's in the news and to really hold forth on conservative politics. And I'm really fired up about I'm fired up about a lot of things, but mostly I'm fired up about this war that we're fighting for the future of our republic. And yeah, so it's good to be here. Good to have this channel to talk about ideas and to talk about the news. And yeah, let's get into it.
All right. So before we get into it, I got a clip to play for you for those who are unaware of what we were talking about with Iran. Here's a clip from ABC News.
U.S. airstrikes actively underway in Iran as the future of diplomacy remains uncertain. A U.S. official confirming to us that U.S. forces are currently conducting attacks across Iran and have been for the last couple of hours. It comes as the U.S. blockade on Iranian ports is set to begin in just a few hours. Trump reinstating the closure due to Iranian attacks in the Gulf. The president also had plans for the U.S. to charge all cargo passing through the critical waterway at a 20% fee, but that's since been walked back. Let's bring in our White House correspondent, Karen Travers, along with.
So that was a quick clip from ABC News.
I think that whole thing about charging 20% was a massive Trump troll.
You think so?
I think so. Yeah, we're just gonna charge you to bring stuff there, and it's like everyone's lose their shit. Oh my God, that's unprecedented. And it's like. Yeah, I don't think there's anything to that really, but yeah, it's funny. I still, as you know, I'm skeptical of all foreign interventions. Especially those conducted against bad actors because they're the easiest to justify, right? And let's face it, the people running that government. Running Iran, running that country, have really been running that country into the ground. It's like the people of Iran have the worst of all worlds, right? They don't have a lot of, they don't really enjoy, their civil liberties are not really protected as such. There's no bounds, against what the government can do to them, and the economy is in terrible shape, and it's been in terrible shape since long before we got into it with Iran. So it's just, it's just one of those things. So when I talk about this, I'm really not defending the intervention itself. I'm just trying to make sense of it. And one of the things I've noticed, is okay. So there was a 19th century, 18th century Prussian military strategist whose name was Clausewitz, And he famously said that war is the continuation of politics with the admixture of other means. Clausewitz is often misquoted. He's very famous in military history circles for several reasons, but he's often misquoted. People quote him as having said that war is politics by other means. That's not what he said. He said it's more, the real translation is closer to war is the continuation of politics with the admixture of other means. And what he's saying there is that essentially, attempting to achieve a political objective is the ground state that diplomacy comes out of, that war comes out of. And you must have diplomacy, and when you add kinetic energy, now you're in a state of war. But at the end of the day, once you take away the kinetic energy, you're back in a state of diplomacy. And the end goal is not war in itself. The end goal is supposed to be whatever political objective you had in mind in the first place when you engaged with this opponent or this adversary or this rival. Okay. So what's interesting about the way Trump is conducting this thing, and again, this is an intervention I'm still skeptical of, but what's interesting about it is that he does seem to be, he's, I can't remember the last time I saw an American president actually conduct war in this kind of Clausewitzian fashion, where he's clearly doing things, as kind of an extension of the diplomatic process. It's like diplomacy plus missiles. Okay, now the missiles are going now back to diplomacy. Oh, really? Okay, now we're going to go back to, it's like, it's very different from this kind of, it does not strike me. And right now, that's the best thing I can say about this war, is that it doesn't strike me as a kind of a millennialist thing. There's no holy fire. There's no righteous desire to bring democracy to the United States. None of that shit. Okay, there's just like diplomacy and economics, and that, to me, that's better, right? I am, if I'm suspicious of foreign interventions, I'm 10 times as suspicious, 100 times suspicious when it's interventions for these grand righteous purposes, like if we're going to bring Jeffersonian democracy to the people of Millie. Nah, the hell with all that. It's like, no, there's this economic matter, and there's a waterway, and it's contested, and the ships have to move, and it's and it's like this longitude line and this latitude line and these good coordinates, and this is what's at stake, right? That's something you can get your head around, and that's something that's a solvable problem, right? Now, whether it's going to be solved, I'm not sure. But again, the first thing I noticed is that Trump is really conducting this war in a Clausewitzian fashion. There's a political objective, and they're in this kind of diplomatic / political process, and every now and then he'll turn the knob and he'll add kinetic energy, right? And then dial it back, and then they're back in the political process. So I think that is interesting. Whether it's good or bad, or whether the chance of succeeding is high or low, I don't know. That's a separate matter. But I think that's something that military history geeks like myself might take note of. The other thing is, which I think is interesting, and which may be to, I don't know if it's to our benefit, but it's certainly to the disadvantage of the Iranian government, right? Is that, so before this thing got kicked off, right, the idea that, there was this idea, right, in policy circles that said, well, you really don't want to mess with Iran because, they could mine the Strait of Hormuz and crash the world economy. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it was this thing that it's like, no, you can't go there with Iran because they've got this card to play where if they mine the straits and if they shut down this maritime traffic, the global economy will crash, and then we're all, so it's right. Okay. Now, He went ahead and kicked it off with Iran. They mined the straits, lobbing missiles back and forth and so on and so forth. The global economy did not crash. And even though we're not quite back to normal, if you look at the prices of kind of like benchmark crudes, various benchmark crudes like West Texas Intermediate and Brent, you see that, well, now with this latest round of fighting, they're a little bit elevated. But I think last week I was checking on them and they were like down around $70 a barrel, right? These are the futures now, right, for West Texas Intermediate and Brent. And these are, for those that don't know, these are two of the grades of crude that are like kind of, standards around the world, the standards by which other grades of crude oil are measured. So you can get a sense of the health of the industry, what's going on, by looking at how much a barrel people are projecting for West Texas Intermediate and how much they're projecting for Brent, which is like North Sea crude oil, that part of the world. Okay. So, I think that's really interesting, right? Like they got into it, dropped bombs, sent missiles over there, destroyed their shit, this, that, the third, and the global economy did not crash. I mean, prices went up a little bit, right? But people kind of figured out a way to route around the damage. Saudi Arabia started looking for different ways to get its oil out of the Gulf, right? I think Saudi does have an overland pipeline where they can get oil out of the Gulf. The problem is that the terminal on the other end is a bottleneck. Its capacity is lower than the capacity of the pipeline itself. So, that's a problem. But at least there's other things people can do, right? China dipped into it. I think China stopped filling its reserve. They decided to relax some of those stupid sanctions on Russian oil. Various things happen, and people managed to kind of make it workable. And what this essentially means is that kind of Iran's trump card of, if we could mine the straits, so don't mess with us, that's gone. Now, the fact that it's gone, whether or not this administration can turn that into a diplomatic and economic, global security win, that's a separate question. But that trump card is gone. Like, no one's afraid anymore that Iran is going to mine the Straits of Hormuz because they've done it, and it didn't crash the world economy. And people figured out a way to work around that. And I think that's fascinating. And the other thing, the last thing I'll point out is that the Mojtaba Khamenei is apparently like never showing his face in public, and that, according to my information, is people in Iran are starting to be like, well, what's going on here? You're the supreme leader, and we never see you. What's happening? So I don't know what to make of that. It's just a fact that he's not being to the public. It is said that he was badly injured in one of those airstrikes. And so, yeah, that's just a thing. But yeah, that's my take on the latest one.
And I was just about to ask you that. What, from the Iranian side, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Like, they had a deal with America.
Yeah.
What does this mean for the deal, and what does it mean for the Iranian side? How are they looking at this airstrike?
Well, I mean, I think it's difficult to say because it's difficult to know who we're dealing with exactly, right? In other words, is this the case of a kind of a rogue faction of the Revolutionary Guard who happen to be in good with some of the missile commanders, right? And they can kind of launch strikes when they want, but they're not wholly under the control of the civilian government in Iran. Because that's a possibility. Like it really is a possibility that they've kind of it's kind of this negotiated thing where it's like, okay, we'll go along with you until we think it's not a good idea. And we'll will launch missiles when we want. We don't know. Or it could be that the schism is more like inside the top leadership of the government. I simply, the Supreme, the Supreme Council for the Islamic Revolution in Iran, scary. I think that's that's the government side of things, as opposed to the Revolutionary Guard, which is more like the armed wing of that. But in any case, there is at least one. I think it's reasonable to assume there is at least one schism. There's probably people who are more inclined to make a deal, and there are probably people who are more inclined to be hardline and to hold out. It's important to note that in highly autocratic governments, right? Sometimes it is the case that you end up with people, especially in the military establishment in those governments, who kind of have an elevated sense of their own military capability, right? And you think about it, if we're talking about a country in which censorship is endemic, right? In which like control of information is everything, right? And it's easy to see this idea taking hold that, Iran really is invincible. And what happened? Actually, look, no country is invincible. And Iran is no exception. And the fact is, look, they just, logistically, they just don't have all that much depth. Yes, they can definitely make themselves a nuisance, right? They can make Lloyd's of London nervous enough not to want to underwrite ships that are making the Straits of Hormuz transit, right? But that doesn't mean that they're that doesn't make them a regional hyperpower. That just makes them someone who can it makes them power who can make other people nervous. And so it may be that there's a faction of the Iranian government that's just really has drunk the Kool-Aid, and it's like, we will never and that kind of is what it is. We've seen this with communist governments as well, right? People in the grip of a different religious frenzy, right, where it's like they just. This is the thing, smoking your own, drinking your own Kool-Aid or breathing your own exhaust fumes. People in all kinds of systems and all kinds of organizations are susceptible to it. And by the way, Americans are no exception, right? Scientists are no exception, okay? But certainly you see much more of that, I think, in places where certain things can't even be brought up on pain of imprisonment. That's a very different thing from everyone's going to look at you funny if you state your weird idea, as opposed to if I say this thing out loud, I will go to prison and possibly be lined up against the wall and shot. Like that's some different shit. So that's again, I'm sorry, I don't have any concrete answers. I think that again, it's like, Trump is really channeling Clausewitz in a sense. Iran's Trump card is gone. The world really can kind of make it all right, even with a blockage of the Straits. And there seems to be more than one faction inside the Iranian leadership that we have to deal with. There's more than one faction making decisions. So back to your question about the deal, the problem is when you make a deal, with whom have you made that deal? And what does it really mean? And how can you hold them to when someone else can just order a missile launch and blow the whole thing out of the water? So that's where I am with that.
So there's also a blockade going on. Trump has ordered a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yes,
How do
blockade of Iran's vessels? Yes.
Yes, blockade of Iran's vessels.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, and
which makes sense. Yeah.
So, can you explain to the listening public why that makes sense to you?
Well, it makes sense to me anyway, because look, if Iran says that other nations, right, cannot transport petrochemicals out of the straits, and they're gonna kind of make that stick by taking pot shots at merchant vessels that are attempting to transit the straits. And by the way, they've ratcheted up. They've said now we're going to take pot shots at vessels that are even traveling in Omani coastal waters, right? Remember that Iran is not the only country that has a coastline in that area, right? So Oman is another one. Oman is literally kind of across the Gulf from Iran, if I'm not mistaken. Oman is, right? And so, so some time ago, these vessels started saying, okay, we're not going to go through the center of the straits. We're going to actually kind of hug the coastline of Oman. So we're technically not in Iranian territorial waters. We're in Oman's territorial waters. And Iran decided to take pot shots at those ships anyway. Okay. So basically, Iran's throwing its weight around, says, we're not going to let these ships. Okay. So the United States said, okay, well, then that includes Iranian ships. It's like you're not gonna blockade everyone else's ships and then somehow think you have freedom of navigation. So yeah, we're not going to allow your ships to transit the strait either. Now, as a practical matter, a lot depends on how much surveillance coverage we actually have. How easy is it to know that another ship is attempting to transit the straits and how the ship is flagged and what have you. But just in principle, it certainly makes sense if you're dealing with an adversary who wants to block everyone else's vessels. And that's a point of contention, then the least you would do with your Navy is block their vessels too. You say, well, okay, if everyone's fair game, everyone's fair. Nobody's leaving. That's the basic thing. Now, in terms of what the effect will be, I have no idea. I can't predict that. It comes down, I think, to an economic game of chicken, right? How much pain can how much economic pain can Iran withstand versus the economic pain inflicted on the rest of the world? Well, again, if you look at the news, I've been looking at my news feed, and what I see is that aside from the price of fuel, which last week had dipped back down almost to pre-war levels, right? The economy's not doing that badly. We've had a problem these last couple of years. We've been working out the inflation that got baked into the system during the great viral freak out. It's just monetary inflation is what happens when you print a lot of money and just, put it in circulation. That's just how it goes. Price inflation is a different thing, right? So, certain things are more expensive now, like semiconductors, memory. If you're buying graphics cards for a home built PC, God help you, right? But the economy's not doing that badly. We have the advantage of we have a large, very diverse economy. There's a lot of stuff we get to lean on, right? And we tend to be able to kind of improvise and kind of work our way around problems, right? So the economy's not too bad. But this I think on the flip side, if the price of gas spikes too high close to November, that is going to have a political effect on the fortunes of the Republican Party, right? That's just how it is. If they can get this put away and under control soon enough, then by November no one will care, right? If the price of everything is low, if it's easy to fill your tank, if it's easy to get your groceries, if it's easy then just no one will care that Trump did this, whether it was a good idea or not. But if energy is more expensive and if the price of goods is significantly higher, because of this conflict, then people remember that at the polls. So that's where we're at. I hope I answered the question.
No, you did. You definitely did.
Yeah.
So Trump just came out with a statement that said that if Iran is not willing to negotiate, these strikes are going to get really, really bad, in his words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump who are upset.
Mm-hmm.
You know, percentage of the population who are upset that he is involved in this war. Some of them are claiming that this is not our war. This is a war for Israel. I want you to answer that question. Well, respond to that criticism on the other side of the break.
Will do. I'll drop off right now.
All right, man. You're listening to The Hidden Path with Carbon Mike.
The caller has hung up.
I am co-host and producer Carl from Your Smart Ass Carl. We do this every Monday at 7 p.m. We're doing it today on Tuesday because yesterday was a personal day for me. We were celebrating my mother-in-law's birthday. So, yeah. Until Dexter comes back, enjoy this news clip from Fox News.
Focusing now on the developments in the Middle East and what's happening between the U.S. and Iran. As we know, the U.S. is restarting some of those attacks against Iran after disruptions at the Strait of Hormuz. Joining us next at Live is Caroline Shively with the team at Fox News. Now, Caroline, what exactly is the U.S. military targeting at these times?
Hi there, Iranian defense systems along the coast, drone and missile sites deeper inland. They also said some maintenance facility, and that's the first time U.S. forces have employed sea drones in combat operations. All told, it took about 5 hours overnight.
A lot of these developments coming in very quickly, but we do know that President Trump did inform several Congress members that these official military operations were restarting once again. Caroline, what do we know? What are lawmakers saying at this time?
Sure, this is very interesting because, of course, by notifying Congress in this official letter to Senator Grassley, that starts the 60-day clock ticking once again, saying that the ceasefire is over. So the White House has 60 days to stop
The conversation now.
All right. What's up, everybody? We are back.
Hey, hang on a second. One second. What the hell? I don't know. I can barely hear you. 1 second. I don't even keep shortcuts.
Give us a second, everybody. Technical difficulties.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I think I might have to call you back because but this tablet has a volume control, but I cannot access it. It literally pops up every now and then, and then disappears, and I don't know what that's about. So I'm gonna actually reboot this tablet and then call you back.
All right, man, we'll do.
All right, cool.
hostilities and come back to Congress for permission. The White House says that is unconstitutional. It's never been tested in court. However, Democrats were absolutely scathing in their response yesterday. Senator Chuck Schumer, the minority leader, went on the floor and said, "Oh, you say we're back at war? No kidding, Donald."
And then finally, because there is so much to keep track of here, the Strait of Hormuz, obviously top of mind here. President Trump saying he is reinstating a blockade at the strait later on today. He also said, Caroline, that he would charge a 20% fee for any cargo moving through the strait. Now, what would that money collected from the fee, what would that go to?
It would basically be for safety and security, according to the president. And that was a shocker that we heard from the White House yesterday, because the U.S. and Iran has been wanting to put some type of toll or fee for ships crossing through the strait. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said that's against international law. We will not allow that to happen. So it was a bit of a shocker to hear that from President Trump, saying that that would be instated on the U.S. side.
All right, Caroline Shively there with our team at Fox News. Caroline, always a pleasure to speak with you. We'll check in soon. All right, and as you can see here, if you're viewing us right now, we do have another poll there at the bottom of the screen because we want to hear from our viewers. What do you think about all of these developments that have happened throughout the last several hours? Want to take us back out to a live look at the radar system of the Strait of Hormuz, courtesy of marine traffic. So the question that we are posing to you is, should the U.S. charge tolls for passage through the strait? You can submit your answer by scanning the QR code on your screen or heading to livenowfox.com/connect. Now, I want to give a little bit more background context to this. The president saying that the U.S. would charge a toll fee for any of the cargo moving through the strait and that the U.S. would be the guardians of the strait, so to speak. Now, that's a change to longstanding U.S. policy. The U.S. Navy had fought for freedom of navigation on the seas since the Barbary Wars in the early 19th century and the War of 1812. It's also a departure from recent U.S. promises that the strait would remain open to all without tolls, recently offered by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on a trip to the region. So we are seeing some more of these answers coming in right now. The majority is saying that, yes, the U.S. should charge tolls. But as you can see, the numbers are changing constantly because we are getting some more of these results. Now, under the interim deal, Iran had agreed that passage through the strait would remain free of charge for 60 days. But the agreement left open what would happen after. Iran asserts it has the right to manage traffic through the strait and potentially charge fees. The U.S. has disputed that. Any attempt by the U.S. or Iran to charge fees would violate global norms on freedom of navigation and raise tensions, likely causing further economic disruption far beyond the region. Meantime, the price of Brent crude oil, the international standard, rose to a 1-month high of over $87 in trading on Tuesday, still well below the nearly $120 it reached at the height of the war, but it is threatening to make costs everywhere even higher. So again, the question that we are posing to our viewers today is, should the U.S. charge tolls for passage through the strait? About 60% of you saying yes.
To other news now, another night of heavy U.S. airstrikes in Iran, the fourth in a row aimed at preventing the regime's new attacks on oil and cargo ships. President Trump, meanwhile, after floating the idea of the U.S. as guardian of ships in the Strait of Hormuz, taking a 20% fee in the process, he's backed off that idea. Our Ed O'Keefe joins us now on a busy day in Washington. Ed, good evening. Why the reversal?
Well, Tony, the president said he's reversing his decision because he'd heard from the leaders of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and other Gulf nations concerned about possible tolls, who vowed instead to invest billions of dollars more in the United States. The president said he supported that idea, but there's no word yet about how much or in what exactly those countries would be investing. We should point out it is against international law to charge tolls on international waterways like the Strait of Hormuz. Tony?
You know, Ed, the other big story in Washington today, for the first time since 2019, justices of the U.S. Supreme Court testified before Congress. We had Elena Kagan and Amy Coney Barrett. They warned of a rise in security threats against justices. Listen.
Roughly 6 weeks ago, I was the victim of a swatting incident. At that point, my teenage son, one of my teenage sons, opened the door to go out with friends and saw in our street, it was full of police cars, who had responded to a false report of gunshots and raised voices in my home.
So, Ed, what are they asking for here? And what's the bigger context? It's not just the court facing potential violence.
That's right, Tony. They're seeking $14.6 million more to give each of the 9 justices 6 security agents to provide them and their families with 24/7 protection. And it's all because of increased threats against the high court. Justice Kagan said Supreme Court police expect a 38% increase in threats this year against the justices after a 25% last year. Threats have been ticking up, especially since the decision to reverse Roe versus Wade leaked back in 2022 and caused a political uproar. It is rare for justices to testify publicly to Congress, but their request for more security funding comes amid increased threats against federal judges and the murder of some judges' family members, as lawmakers continue facing threats of their own, and of course amid the assassination attempts on President Trump and other shootings outside here at the White House in recent months. The increase in political violence, now an increased cost for taxpayers. Tony?
Ed, thank you very much.
We have breaking news. CENTCOM just announced minutes ago on an X post that, quote, at 3 p.m. Eastern today, Central Command forces began launching an additional round of strikes against Iran to continue degrading Iranian capabilities used to attack commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. The strikes are taking.
All right, we are back. You good now, Destin?
We are good to go.
All right, everybody. Sorry for that long break, but in live streaming, technical difficulties happen. So we are back.
Listen, don't blame the live streaming. Blame the about to use.
I'm gonna blame Iran. It was Iran. Anyways, we're still talking about the conflict that's going on in Iran right now. So during the break, I played a clip that basically said that Trump is walking back his proposed 20% tax on the Strait of Hormuz.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. He walked it back. Saudi Arabia, it was reported that Saudi Arabia and other countries in the region expressed concern over that, and that they were willing to invest billions into the American economy and infrastructure and things like that. So you guys heard that during the clip. I'm gonna get Des's reaction to it. So what do you think about that, Des, that Trump is walking it back because the countries in the region outside of Iran expressed a little concern over that? Go ahead.
I think that's one of those things that is a very obvious troll. Yeah, that's one of those things that's a very obvious troll. How we fucking low. And you talk about a 20% fee on you the transiting the strait. Okay, so really we're going to somehow measure the carrying capacity of every vessel that transits the straits and then figure out based on the what crude they're carrying, and this is closest by benchmark, and so the capacity is this many gallons based on no, it's a troll. It's okay. Now, I think, like, as a conservative, I would much rather refrain from trolling in this way. I think it's not necessarily good for stability. It's not good for our credibility, but that's how it is. I mean, in the same way that, look, Greenland, the whole Greenland thing. I mean, if there are still people walking around right now who think he's serious about this in a way. No, like, obviously not. What are you talking about? Was going to invade Greenland, really? And like fight a new war with the Danish? No. Come on, it's a troll. Now, again, I too have my questions about why he trolls in this way. I don't know. I think it's interesting that you said in regarding this thing about a 1% fee for goods transit in the Straits of Hormuz that Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries were prepared to spend billions of dollars in the U.S. I don't know what that means. I think that's just it's interesting that people were like, okay, look, we can't have that, but we will do this other thing. I thought that was interesting. Whether that goes anywhere, I simply don't. Whether that's going to go where, I don't know. Will there actually be more investment in the U.S., whatever that means, by Saudi Arabia? I don't know. But I just do not take that seriously, right? And yeah, I don't take it seriously. I think if people say it would have been better had he not said it, I would be inclined to agree with that. Sure, but again, I just don't take it seriously at all. It's just not a real thing.
So, as far as the economy, what do you say to those who will push back on the idea that the economy has not been affected by this in a significant way? As far as here at home.
I didn't say it. I didn't say it hasn't been affected. That's what I said.
No, you didn't say it. You didn't say it. But like there are, there are media pundits who are on Trump's side who have said it that the economy has not been affected in any kind of way, in any significant way.
Okay. Look, that's ridiculous anymore. It has been affected, right? You could say the effect was mild and it was short-lived, right? And looking at the information I have, I could see that that's mostly true. Like the effects on the economy were mild and short-lived. Okay, but the economy was affected. I mean, of course, the economy is going to be affected. You're talking about, what, a fifth of the world's energy supply goes through the Straits, right? Now, I will say that it's easy to overestimate the effect on the economy because people think about gasoline and diesel fuel, right? But the fact is that maybe 2/3 of the energy we use to climate control our dwellings and offices and I forget what I should withdraw that because I forget where I read that number and I'm not sure about the reliability of that number. But a large proportion of the energy we use is not used to move our cars and buses around. It's used to climate control and light our dwellings and our offices, right? And then of course another large portion of the energy we use is used to kind of run our industrial machinery, right? And to the extent that those things are powered mostly by natural gas, right? That is gas generators, right? And coal-fired power plants, then natural gas and coal are kind of less affected by what happens in the Gulf, right? What happens in the Gulf is going to affect the economy of a major industrial nation such as ours. It's just that thanks to the fact that we have a very diverse economy, we're able to recover from shocks relatively quickly. These kinds of things relatively quickly, and that's kind of what happened. Right? So yeah, this is the problem with a lot of news media, right? You have these camps people fall into, like either they hate Trump and so everything is horrible, or they love Trump and everything is wonderful. And it's like, well, bro, there's like a third position, which is that, well, things are not great, but they're not as bad as they might otherwise have been. And it is what it is. Of course, it has had an effect. I mean, that's come on. We just saw the prices up, and here's the thing: some of these price fluctuations are not even necessarily due to immediate shortages, right? In other words, if you see, for example, if you see someone shoots a missile at a ship in the Gulf, in the Persian Gulf, and the price of oil spikes up, right? Well, it should be obvious that fluctuation that you observe in the price of oil, right, is obviously not due to. In other words, the effect of someone shooting a missile at that ship cannot possibly have depressed oil supply around the world enough for that immediate price spike to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of times we look at these things like the same day when there's a jump off here, there's a price spike in this thing here. What's happening? How is it possible for that effect to travel around that prices that quickly? A lot of it actually is speculative activity. A lot of the futures trading. So a lot of what people are doing is trading, and that futures trading, right, derivatives, options, and so on and so forth, right? That can have effect on the actual prices of things. So we have to kind of distinguish between, what kind of noise are we seeing? What kind of signal are we seeing in the market? How much of that is actual signal? How much of that is noise? How much of that is speculation, right? And activity in commodities markets, it can cause a lot of mischief. You see what I'm saying? That's just how that is. Speculative activity in commodities markets actually caused California, the state of California, to have a kind of a fake energy crisis some years ago. This was back when I think it was maybe Gray Davis was governor, or maybe even before that. But yeah, Enron essentially created an energy crisis. Even though actual energy is not in short supply in California, that's what I'm trying to say. Right? Go back and look at that particular crisis, and the proceeding of and they try to get California money back from Enron. You will find that the crisis did not involve an actual shortage of the stuff needed to keep it thing that was done in spreadsheets and so on and so forth, Wall Street stuff. Okay. So the same kind of thing can happen this way when something happens is literally of a price.
You're breaking up a little bit, Dustin. Yeah, it's coming in. The audio is coming in really, really bad. I can barely understand you. Okay. All right, everybody, give us a second. That's just going to disconnect and call us back.
The caller has hung up.
I'm going to play you some more news regarding Iran while we're on the break.
So President Trump ordering a new set of strikes on Iranian military targets for a third straight night yesterday.
This as another blockade in the Strait of Hormuz is scheduled to begin this afternoon.
Aisha Hasni is live at the White House with the very latest. Aisha.
Hey, good morning. A lot of firepower, a lot of back and forth. Let's get started with what happened overnight as the president brings down his iron fist on Iran. The U.S. pounded Iran for 5 hours last night. CENTCOM says they hit military targets across 6 different locations, but did not say if they struck Pickaxe Mountain. That's something the president said was a potential target for a nice, big, fat shot. Also seeing reports that the IRGC carried out drone and missile strikes on U.S. military targets in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan. And a Dutch shipping firm says one of its vessels was struck off the coast of Oman. All of this hours after the president said the U.S. was taking control of the strait.
We will end up just controlling the whole thing. And what they're doing is being very foolish, very stupid, and they've treated people horribly. They've killed 52,000 protesters so far that we can determine.
Dexter.
52,000 killed, and it's a terrible situation.
The president also announced a new 20% fee in the strait, turning the tables on Iran. He said Iran and anyone doing business with them has to pony up.
We're putting the blockade back. And it's a blockade not for anybody but Iran. In other words, anybody doing business with Iran can't go through. Everyone else will be able to go through. So it's a blockade. It's a very strong blockade. The blockade was probably more effective even than hitting them. But I think the combination is the thing that really does.
Iran's foreign minister posting this in response on X, writing, POTUS is absolutely right. Whoever provides secure and safe passage of commercial vessels.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but we're back with Mr. Carbon Mike, aka Dexter Taylor. We're still talking about.
Were you playing that clip again?
Yeah, no, I was playing something for the audience during the break. It was a Fox News clip.
Oh, okay.
Iran response to Trump after the U.S. announced toll in the Strait of Hormuz. So we got you back. Audio seems to have cleared up. So let's get back to what you were saying.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, yes, one, if you just think about the timing, when the time crisis in some part of the world erupted, you see some relevant commodity spike up on that same day. Just know that it's actually impossible for a supply shortage to propagate through the system in that short time. What you are seeing is a result of speculation. People who are in the business of betting the huge price of commodities and currencies in the world make them anxious, right? And their betting activity will stay.
Yeah, we're starting to get more interference with you. You still there, Dexter? We're starting to get a lot of interference on your line.
I'm going to
bear with us, everyone. We're still trying to work this out. Keep in mind, Dexter is not calling from a normal line. He's using the internet to actually call us right now. So if the Wi-Fi acts up where he's at, it acts up on our end. I can't. You're still coming in very, very gargled up. Like it's very like slow.
That is strange. All right. Yeah, there's something going on with the Wi-Fi here. I'm not sure what it is. Hang on.
All right. Bear with us, everybody. You're listening to the Hidden Path. We're talking Iran. Iran is back in the news today. President Trump has announced that there was some strikes on strategic targets around the country, and that he said he was going to charge a 20% fee or tax or whatever you want to call it on the Strait of Hormuz, goods that's going through there. He has now rolled that back. He walked it back, saying that is no longer on the table. Me and Dexter has been discussing that for the last hour, how it affects Americans here at home, how it affects the global economy. And, later we're going to talk about the impact that it might have on the midterms. Midterms is in November. We're a few months away from that. I want to know from the audience, how do you feel about the midterms? Do you think conservatives have a good chance of keeping the Senate, taking over the House? Not taking over the House, keeping the House rather, and delivering President Trump's agenda to the American people? You think that stands a chance, or do you think the Democrats might have a fighting chance here? I heard from conservatives over the weekend that, they believe, they're very confident that we're going to pull it out, that we have nothing to worry about. And then I've also heard from liberals, Democrats, who believe that there's going to be a blue wave, and that because of all of the recent news and the economy, that the conservative party, Republican Party rather, the Republicans are going to lose badly, So we will see. Only time will tell. In the meantime, I'm going to continue playing this clip until... Oh, well, never mind. Desiree's calling back. You guys get to hear what I hear when he calls back.
This is a free call from
Dexter Taylor.
Keep in mind,
an
Dexter is
incarcerated
currently
individual at
incarcerated.
New York State Department of
Most of you
Corrections
know
and
that if you've
Community
been following
Supervision.
us since
This
the
call is
beginning.
subject to recording and monitoring.
He
An
is
incarcerated individual's use of
over
institutional telephones constitutes
his
consent, and your calls may
ability
be
to
provided to law
exercise the
enforcement
Second Amendment
agencies.
in
To
the state of
accept
New
this
York.
free call, press 1. To refuse this free call.
And before
Preventing
anybody say,
suicide
well,
is
that's New
important.
York,
If you have
remember
concerns during
that
this
we do
call,
not
please
concede
contact
ground
the
to
individual's
the enemy.
facility
And
to
New York is the
communicate with
enemy.
them.
You should
Thank you
never
for
run.
using Securus. You may start the conversation now.
All right, man. Welcome back. Welcome back. We are trying to get this figured out, everybody. Please bear with us. It is unfortunate, but that's it's calling from a prison. So and no, it's still doing its buffering. Yeah, no, it's still doing its buffering. I can hear every other word you're saying. Yeah, I can't make out anything you're saying. All right, that's it. To hang up for a fourth time. So just bear with us again. You're just listening to the Hidden Path. Apparently, Wi-Fi issues is happening in the prison where he's at. I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe it's a weather event that is causing the Wi-Fi to do what it's doing. So let's see, what's the weather in Coxsackie, New York right now? Let's see weather right now. It's pretty sunny, so it's not a weather event that's causing issues. It seems as it's just the present. So I apologize to everyone who's listening to us. This is not typically what happens during the show. We typically have a great conversation. Just listen to our past shows if you want to get an idea of what this show is like without the technical difficulties. We're usually discussing topics and having fun. But right now, you're just listening to my voice. So I'll talk about a few things that's on my mind. What's on my mind, of course, is always the Second Amendment. I'm a Second Amendment person, strictly Second Amendment person when it comes to my online personality. My true personality, I'm a vast, I have vast interests in different things. So I'm very excited about the Supreme Court taking up the assault weapons cases out of Illinois and Connecticut. I think for so long, people within blue states have suffered under feel-good gun control laws that make absolutely no sense. However, there are people out there who are pushing for these laws in the name of safety. Now, safety is not guaranteed to anyone. You have to fight for your safety. You have to fight for protection. And Yeah, one of the ways people fight is through being armed, whether you're armed with a firearm, a bat, or a knife, blunt, sharp objects, it doesn't matter. That's the way people fight. And unfortunately, there's self-defense laws out there that goes against the idea of self-protection.
Dexter.
Let's just call it back. Give us a second, everybody.
This is a free call from
I'll finish my thought another time.
an incarcerated individual at New York State
Hopefully
Department
this
of
works
Corrections
this
and
time,
Community
'cause, wow.
Supervision. This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
Wi-Fi is worse
An
than McDonald's
incarcerated
Wi-Fi.
individual's use of institutional
Ever had to use
telephones
McDonald's
constitutes
Wi-Fi to
consent, and your
finish a
calls
college
may be
report?
provided
You know
to
what
law
I'm talking
enforcement agencies. To accept this free call, press 1. To refuse this free call, preventing suicide is important. If you have concerns during this call, please contact the individual's facility to communicate with them. Thank you for using Secure. May start the conversation now.
All right, let's see if
Check
it's
1
working
2,
again.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
You're working.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
You're doing it. You sound
All right.
absolutely great.
Great.
All right.
All right. So where were we? We're talking about Iran. We're talking about commodities. Talking about speculation.
Yeah, we're still
so,
talking. We're still talking about Iran. Now,
yeah.
One thing that I wanted to inform my audience is apparently, this whole 20% tax that Trump had initially proposed. I think you're absolutely right. There, Carbon, this was a troll job by him because it is against international law for him to actually propose a 20% tax on the waterways.
Right. Just like it's against international law for Iran to charge a toll on the waterways. All right. So, it may have been that when he was trolling in that way, he was doing it to remind people that, this is the same thing that Iran was threatening to do or was proposing to do, right? Charge a toll on everything that goes through the straits, right? And did y'all lose your shit when they said it, or just when I said it? You know what I'm saying? Could have been that. I don't know. Excuse me.
Well, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
But what were you saying before all the technical difficulties?
Yeah, I was just saying that I think I was talking about speculative activity in markets and how that has an effect. Sometimes that's out of proportion to whatever disruption is taking place. So it's just what does that mean? Look, what does that mean? It means that it may matter more how nervous Wall Street players are about energy flows. That may matter more than the actual stability of energy flows, right? That may matter more to the price of energy commodities. You see what I'm saying? Because speculators have a big effect on prices. That's all. But bringing it back to the war, it's again a lot of question marks. And I still have not been able to figure out why this war was started. And you remember, Carl, weeks ago, I was playing with different theories. Maybe Iran already has a nuclear weapon and we had to go in there, but that didn't seem to that theory just as things play, that seemed to fit the facts less and less well, right? And like I said, I still don't know why this thing got kicked off. People have theories. Israel is of course going to get mentioned when you're talking about conflict in the Gulf, right? They say, well, maybe Israel pushed Trump to kick off this war.
Well, if you leave it to the Democrats,
I simply don't know.
If you leave it to the Democrats' conspiracy theories, not the official politicians, but the pundits who are on the side of the left. They're saying that Trump kicked off this war to shield himself from the Epstein files or releasing the Epstein files.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I mean, that's look, that's just beyond. I think that's beyond silly. First of all, it's not as if Trump personally has the Epstein files on a hard drive somewhere, and he's like refusing to upload it to Dropbox. What are they talking about? What does it even mean? Like what? I just I don't buy that. But then again, I don't really buy most conspiracy theories. I think that most of the things government does, it does in the open. Most of the bad things included, it does in the open. And the problem is our failure to pay attention to what's right in front of us. And we go looking for all these weird patterns and all these weird places. I don't buy it. Again, all of this is separate from the whether or not this was a good idea. I mean, here's the thing. I think that if Iran didn't have a nuclear weapon, right, if they weren't like 2 weeks from breakout, there's very little to suggest to me that this war was a good idea, because it could have waited. Even if you say, well, we're going to have to eventually get into it with them, we're going to eventually have to tangle with them over the straits or over the nuclear program, this could have waited, right? So I don't know. I simply don't know. Yeah, that's it. And of course, look, here's the thing. Because it is a fact, let's put aside conspiracy theories, whatever. It is a fact that the United States does not have very good human intelligence in that part of the world. We have eyes in the sky, we have satellites, we have this, we have that, we have electronic intercept, okay? But we don't have very good people on the ground walking around figuring out what's going on. That is not our specialty. It's never been our specialty. And, as far back as the Cold War, that wasn't what we did, right? We didn't have people on the ground in Eastern Europe walking around. What we had was American CIA assets in embassies under diplomatic cover, who would walk around with, packages full of cash and bribe locals to walk around and see what's going on. And those were the spies. And our guys, our CIA guys, the embassies were just the handlers for the spies. We do not have a lot of experience in terms of setting up these deep intelligence networks, okay? The Jordanians have much more experience than we do. The Saudis have some. The Israelis have a lot, right? So now, is it possible that he could have received a briefing from Mossad or Shin Bet or someone like that said, listen, our people tell us that the Iranians are only 2 weeks from breakout, or we think we really need to. It's possible. And, remember that every head of state, right, like Trump, like anyone who's in that seat, right, is essentially an information bubble. And they need people to poke holes in that bubble so they know what's going on. Now, this is mitigated somewhat in terms of domestic matters because Trump is on social media a lot. He seems to be very good at penetrating the bubble. But on the other side of the planet, he is reliant, just like everyone else in this administration, on people over there who know or claim to know what is going on. So could he have been rolled into starting this war? It is possible. But I don't have enough information to say that's what happened. It's possible, right? May even be plausible. And that's as far as I'll go. But we are where we are. And to me, the question is how to get this deal done, how to cool this war off and put it to bed, so we can get back to something like business, and continue with the much more important task of fighting a political war against the liberals and progressives. I think that's much more important to the long-term health and stability of the United States. is not defeating Iran, but defeating liberals and progressives. I think that's much important. So
speaking of that, I want to talk a little bit while staying on the topic of Iran here for the next 13 minutes. We're gonna switch subjects at the top of the hour. How does this impact the midterms? And I don't just mean just with Iran, but the economy, with things like what's going on with ICE, because there's a lot of people who are upset with ICE or support what ICE is doing. What is the outlook on the midterms, in your opinion, real quick?
Well, again, I can't predict. I have very little information, right, on the state of outreach, right? The GOP, where the GOP is weak, where the MAGA movement is weak, is in outreach. That's just a fact of life. I wish that fact weren't true, but it is. The outreach is terrible. And when I say outreach, I mean literally outreach to people who are not already on side, right? They're very good at reaching out to their own, but reaching out to people who are not quite on side, they're terrible at it. Awful, horrible, right? As far as I know, they have not gotten any better at it in the last year. Put another way, they have not done much to consolidate the gains that Trump made in the first place when he won this last election, right? They have not done very much to kind of follow the roadmap that he set out in terms of here's how to find votes where other people might not be looking for them, right? That's kind of the thing he did in this last election, right? His team didn't just look in all the same old places for votes. They said, well, maybe there are people whose interests point to a kind of a rough alignment with where we are politically. How do we find those people, right? It doesn't seem to me that Republicans across the board are kind of interested in doing that and kind of taking the fight to the enemy in that way. And that's a terrible shame. Now, what does that mean for the midterms? I don't know. I just don't know. I don't think I can't put very much weight on any kind of positive facts reported by AP because AP hates Trump and they're going to spin things in a certain way. When I notice a few days go by without AP talking about the economy, right? Without the AP Newswire talking about the economy, I can assume that the economy is doing halfway decent, right? Because if the economy was in terrible shape, they'd be talking about it all the time, right? That's kind of how I could figure out what's going on more or less, right? But I can't, it's like I can't read a story and know anything, of the deep truth of what's going on, right? But so I simply don't know. I think, how can I put this? Well, first of all, okay, let's say gasoline prices. Gas prices are a big deal, but gas taxes, for example, differ from state to state. So some states, some people in some states pay lower prices at the point people in other states pay higher ones. That's kind of outside of Trump's control. Energy prices, the same thing. Price for other kind of things. The price of heating or cooling your home, and so on and so forth. And we have 50 different governments, at least 50 different governments in this country, right? And they have different approaches to taxes, to creating a welcoming or hostile environment toward business, toward energy production, toward all these things. So it's going to differ. The question really, I don't really have any answers. I can just talk about the questions. To me, the questions come down to how well are Republicans poised to take advantage of the clear win they got in the redistricting fight? That's the question. So if and I can't name all the states where the Republicans won the redistricting fight, but again, victory in these midterms involves holding on to the House and the Senate. So the question is, what states do they have to do well in, right? And if they can just hold the line in those states, then there's a good chance that they'll do well. Yeah, and that's it.
So our good friend Moni, friend of the show, had posted a topic that she wanted to get your opinion on. So there was an illegal immigrant from India. I'm not even going to attempt to try to pronounce his name. It looks like we're just going to call him Mr. Singh. He killed 3 people from California in a crash. It looks like it was a car crash, semi-truck crash. And he just got sentenced to 5 years in prison. Are you surprised that California even, locked this man up? Are you surprised by the sentence? Is it too short? 5 years for killing 3 people? In my opinion, it seems like it's way too short. But that is the California justice system.
What was he charged with? Was he driving drunk, or was he not able to read a sign, or what was he charged with?
Let's see. I'm gonna see if I can pull up a clip here. Bear with me.
Yeah.
So I mean,
nothing much about California surprises me very much.
I mean, it's to me, it's like 5 years for, even if it was like a cupcake charge, 5 years for 2 people losing their life seems like.
Well, again,
you're serving 10 years.
I don't have all the facts.
Yeah.
But I don't have all the facts. But I don't have all the facts.
Let's
I
get
don't
it.
have all the facts. I'm not going to just jump out of it. Right.
Let's get into it.
CHP officers on the witness stand today in the case of a truck driver arrested for a crash in Ontario that killed 3 people.
CBS LA's Zach Moetto was at the hearing where the driver's defense team is questioning the CHP's investigation.
Attorneys in the courtroom today cross-examining CHP officials working to determine if this deadly crash was the driver's fault or a result of a truck malfunction. Truck driver Jayshawn Preet Singh back in a San Bernardino County courtroom Friday as attorneys work to determine his role in the deadly 10 freeway big rig crash from October that killed 3 people.
When you first met Mr. Singh, did you feel the need to do an intoxication investigation?
No. Singh was initially arrested on DUI charges, but toxicology tests showed he was not under the influence of drugs or alcohol at the time of the crash, and those charges were dropped. Defense today hammering home concerns about the CHP crash investigation and what they say could be bias, that the investigations were conducted under a false pretense that the driver was intoxicated at the time of the crash.
Is it at the conclusion of that conversation that you felt the need to do an intoxication investigation?
Correct. New video of the crash from a distant Caltrans camera was played in court today, showing smoke billowing into the air from the initial impact. And this video from Singh's truck cabin shows his semi-truck plowing into the back of cars in front of him, causing a chain reaction crash involving 8 vehicles back on October 21st, which killed 3 people and injured several others. Another witness taking the stand Friday, a CHP heavy truck expert who specializes in big rig mechanics, currently examining Singh's semi-truck involved in the crash. He says one of the 6 brakes he's inspected so far on Singh's truck was out of adjustment, leaving both the defense and prosecution with more questions about what led up to and what caused this deadly crash.
Does that prohibit that brake from working?
It won't brake as efficiently as it's designed to. It will still brake, but it won't contribute as much as the rest of the brakes that are in adjustment.
Now, both the driver's iPhone and iPad were recovered at the scene of the crash. Attorneys are now working to determine if the data pulled from those devices show that Singh was distracted while operating that massive truck leading up to this deadly crash. Singh is expected to be back in court on Thursday. Reporting in Ontario, I'm Zach Boetto, CBS LA.
Details about the undocumented.
All right, so there you have it, Dexter. What's your opinion based off of what you heard?
Still not enough to go on. Is Singh in the country legally? Does he speak the language? Does he speak and read English? What, you know what I'm saying? Like, because
it says that he was an illegal immigrant. So no.
Okay, right. So, yeah. So I mean, that's the thing. I don't know what the California state law is in terms of what they found him guilty of. If they found him guilty of negligence, right? Negligent homicide. They said that the toxicology did not show that he was driving under the influence.
No.
So that leaves negligence, right? Intention, whatever. I mean, these things do happen. So I don't know. 3 years. You said 5 years. Yeah, that 5 years seemed a little bit light for 3 people. On the other hand, if to me, the bigger question, so I don't know. I'm not sure how to come at that question. Again, remember what I always say, right? The criminal code is there primarily to protect the decent from the wicked, right? Now, so did he do something? Did he do something wicked that resulted in the lives of these people? Well, he may have been negligent behind the wheel. He may have been inattentive. He may have been drifting off to sleep. I don't know, right? Again, still not enough information. What we can say is if he was in the country illegally, right, that would have been an easy win to let's just go ahead and not give this person ACDL. How about that? Right? Like, that's what I want to focus on because that's clear. If it is a fact that he was not in the country legally, then he had no business being behind the wheel of a commercial vehicle, especially not an 18-wheeler, any commercial vehicle. And that, you see, that's much more than how much how much Singh should be punished. That's how much the authorities in California should be punished for their role, right, in enabling people to come to this country illegally and to get commercial driver's licenses, and to throw thousands and thousands of pounds of steel around our country's motorways, right, and possibly cause accidents. Now, of course, you're going to hear people say, well, people who are in the country legally also cause traffic accidents. And that's very true, right? People who are in the country legally also cause traffic accidents that result in loss of life. That is true. But, right, keeping illegal immigrants from operating commercial tractor trailers is an easy win. Like that's an easy one. In the same way that, people say, well, there are illegal aliens who commit crimes. Yes, there is a non-zero number of illegal aliens, illegal immigrants who commit crimes. Now, a lot of people say, well, but, American citizens also commit crimes. Yes, that's also true. But again, it's an easy win to say, well, listen, no. We looked at your papers. We're not going to let you in the country. And therefore, and that to me is one of the things that government is supposed to do. It's like, well, you take the easy wins. The person does not belong here; they shouldn't be here. If they somehow get in here, then at the very least, a state like California, even though that state is not tasked with border protection as such, that's the purview of the federal government. At the very least, a rational state government can say, well, no, we're going to let people operate commercial vehicles if they're not in the country legally, if we haven't vetted them in that way. That's just basic. So that's the thing I have a real problem with. Yeah.
So according to NBC for Los Angeles, Singh entered the country in 2022 through the southern border. He obtained a driver's CDL in 2024. And what else does it say here? He took a plea deal. So he changed his not guilty plea to guilty, and that's why he receives 5
to a
years.
lesser charge.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Yeah. So, yeah. So, I mean, if I would have, there was one scenario where I could have got 3 years if I had, or 3.5 years or thereabouts if I had agreed to plead guilty. But of course, again, there was no way I was going to plead to anything, to any crime, because, you know my view already. So it is what it is. But yes, it's just very interesting, right? That is what states, especially blue states like California, are doing, right? They claim to be very concerned. When they talk about so-called gun control, they claim to be very concerned about people, carrying these weapons around. But the fact is, every motor vehicle is a potential weapon.
Right.
And they don't seem to, California, among others, doesn't seem to really have any interest in keeping these weapons out of the hands of the wrong people. They only seem to be concerned with keeping firearms out of the hands of law-abiding citizens. And that is very specifically what they're concerned with. Because, of course, non-law-abiding citizens, criminals in California, have no problem getting firearms. None. Just like criminals in New York City have no problem getting their hands on firearms. None. Chicago, East St. Louis, Baltimore, D.C. I mean, you know what I'm saying? No problem. Right? So, this is just more of the same from our blue state brethren. It is what it is. I wonder, this is a sidebar, but I wonder how someone like Gavin Newsom can really fix his face to even say he's thinking about running for president in 2028. I mean, the state of California, the condition of California right now, is its own series of attack ads against Gavin Newsom. Like the condition of the state itself, the condition of its cities, the condition of its infrastructure, its inability to do big things, to do serious things, to execute on what matters for Californians, its inability to do all those things, just speaks volumes about why someone like Gavin Newsom should never have been allowed to be governor, should never have been allowed to be chief dog catcher. But here we are. So that's what I'll say. And again, as far as Mr. Singh himself, he shouldn't have been in the country. And if you're going to say, okay, he got in the country and so be it, he should never have been behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler. No way. I mean, that's just obvious. So,
I'm perplexed how he got a CDL.
Yeah.
How he even got a CDL without being a documented legal status immigrant.
Yes, as I understand it, some of these states, including California, have they've just introduced let's say novel ways to get people through those bureaucratic hurdles, right? It's like I've heard of people being able to pay money and get a CDL without passing the road test. We've all heard of people who have CDLs and who cannot speak or write English. Or I should read English. That's crazy, right? But again, we have to go look at these states. Why are the Democrats who are running these states, why have they seen fit to do this? And, we've talked before about why they are doing it. Yeah,
I remember we had a similar incident here in Florida from an illegal immigrant who made a U-turn on the highway, which I just don't understand how one could even think to do that, but they did. And that person was also from California.
Well, they were illegal immigrants, but they had got their CDL in California, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. They were from somewhere else, but they got their driver's license, their commercial driver's license. Yeah, there have been at least, I think, half a dozen incidents in the last year or so, if I'm not mistaken, of truck drivers causing accidents, causing fatalities.
You have 1 minute left.
And when you look, it's like, well, this person never should have been granted a CDL in the first place. Some of these DMVs have been actually rated by federal authorities. There's all kinds of malfeasance going on in these places. So, yeah, it is what it is. I just made, so I'm going to drop. Come on back.
All right, man. Yeah. So while Dexter is calling us back, I am going to play another clip from the scene accident story. Here we go.
Driver charged in connection to that deadly chain reaction crash in Ontario.
Well, today, the driver made his first appearance before a judge pleading not guilty. And Eyewitness News reporter Leticia Juanes is live with details and how he was able to legally get a commercial driver's license. Leticia.
Well, David, I could tell you this. Singh was able to obtain his commercial driver's license through both state and federal processes that were in place at the time for him to do so. Those processes, though, changed on a federal level back on September 26th, just about a month ago. And it was then that he was able to obtain a credible, valid driver's license. But now he stands accused, of course, of manslaughter while driving intoxicated. Shackled and wearing an orange jail jumpsuit, 21-year-old Jashin Preet Singh appeared in a Rancho Cucamonga courtroom to face charges of vehicular manslaughter while intoxicated and driving under the influence causing injury. Dashcam video shows the horrifying moment. Investigators say Singh, behind the wheel of a Freightliner truck, plowed through several stopped cars, killing 3 people. In court, Singh pled not guilty through his public defender with an interpreter by his side. Now, federal officials say this tragedy never should have happened. The Department of Transportation released what it is calling a, quote, bombshell report, accusing California of violating federal law by allowing Singh to continue driving when he should have been disqualified. The report says that the state failed to enforce an emergency rule issued in September, one that tightened license requirements for all non-U.S. citizens. In June, California issued Singh, who is an asylum seeker, a restricted non-domicile commercial driver's license with a K restriction limiting driving to in-state. Non-domicile CDLs.
This is a free call from.
In October, Singh turned 21, and his K restriction was removed, which DOT officials say if California had followed the new rule, Singh's license would have been denied because of his status as an asylum seeker. Governor Gavin Newsom's office pushing back on those claims in a statement saying the federal government approved and renewed this individual's federal employment authorization multiple times, which allowed him to obtain a commercial driver's license in accordance with federal law. According to the California State Department of Transportation, Singh was issued a federal work permit authorized until the year 2030.
You may start the conversation now.
All right, we're back. We're back with the hidden path. You're not on the beaten path. You're on the hidden path. Hidden path of politics. So while you were on the break here, Dexter, I played another clip for the audience. So just to catch you up on the scene case, he got his driver's license in 2025, not 2024. There was a misprint on LA News, NBC Channel 4. So he got his driver's license in 2025. The driver's license was issued by the state of California. Apparently, California has a program where asylum seekers can get a driver's license and a commercial driver's license in the state of California. It actually goes against federal law. It was a federal law that they could get a commercial driver's license, but once Trump took office, that went away. So it was under a Biden era, exemption. But Trump took that away. The federal government is accusing California of violating federal law in issuing that license.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. I mean, that seems correct, right? Yeah. So, it's a hell of a thing. It's a hell of a thing, like I said, these are, not letting people who can't read or speak English.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. He
Win.
didn't know how to speak English.
There you go. Right. So not letting people who don't know the language get on the road behind the wheel of any vehicle, but especially a commercial vehicle. Not allowing that seems like an easy win. But again, California has different ideas. And so, yeah, that's the kind of thing. Like I said, my real question is not about his sentence or whatever. It's about, how is it that someone like Gavin Newsom can fix his face and say, yeah, I want to bring these innovations to the country at large. I mean,
could you imagine him
crazy,
as president?
but,
wow.
Oh my God. No, I could, but I'd rather not. No, thank you. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So
I think that would be a natural disaster if Gavin Newsom was president. I could not imagine a worse, maybe Bernie Sanders, but I couldn't imagine a worse man as president.
It would be an unnatural disaster. It would be a very unnatural disaster. Yeah. I mean, Jesus. Yeah, terrible.
So I want to get into you have something else to say?
Well, no, I was gonna. I don't know if you're gonna talk about the New York Times thing next.
Yeah,
but
I was.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll let you go on and intro that.
Well, I'm gonna toss it to you while I look at some clips on that.
Okay. Yeah. So apparently, what has happened is this. Some New York Times reporters, who I believe were either on Air Force One or privy to some of the information about Air Force One, apparently made public some or all of what they knew. Backstory is that, okay, so, Air Force One, what does that even mean? Well, technically, any aircraft, right, that the president, and any Air Force aircraft that the president is on is Air Force One, right? So that's just how that works, right? So, but there are only a very few aircraft that are kind of technically qualified to serve as his flying headquarters, right? So this traditional Air Force One, which is basically a souped up jetliner, souped up Boeing jetliner, right? And recently, the Qatari government has made available, I think we bought it from them, or I don't know what the transaction was.
It was a gift.
There's another aircraft that is supposed to.
It was a gift.
Okay, so they gifted us an aircraft, and the tech teams went over it and kind of souped it up, what have you, and qualified it to be another Air Force One. But of course, not all potential Air Force Ones are created equal. So this one, the one from the Qataris, lacks some of the security features, some of the electronic warfare countermeasures, anti-missile systems, what have you, that are in the I guess what you call the traditional Air Force One, Boeing's Air Force One. So let's see. So I think yes. So 5 New York Times journalists reported on security questions involving that new Qatari gifted Air Force One. I don't know whether they were on board the aircraft or whether they spoke to people who worked on. I don't know what the situation is, but they reported on these security questions, and those some or all of them have been, yes, the subpoenas, I think 5, yeah, all 5 have been issued subpoenas, right, to testify. Now, I don't know what's in those subpoenas. I don't know what they're being asked to testify about. Okay, but the reaction, I think, of the media classes and the kind of the managerial classes is, I think, very interesting, because of course what they're saying is this is a huge huge First Amendment problem, right? There's chilling of speech, and how dare you go after reporters in this way, and the government should not be attacking journalists in this. So now, I would note that these people have not been arrested; they've been subpoenaed. They've been asked to appear before, I believe, a grand jury and answer questions, right? And so I just think that's interesting. I don't yet have an opinion on the validity of not the validity, because of course it's a valid subpoena, but was it justified, right? Was the Department of Justice justified? Was it within its rights to issue subpoenas to these people? Well, it's hard to know, because the first question is, what did they know, and how did they come to know, and what information did they disseminate that the government might have had questions about, right? To me, these are the valid questions. To me, it's not very useful to say that the government should never subpoena a reporter. That seems ridiculous. Right? Really, there's no circumstance under which a journalist should be subpoenaed and, asked questions under oath. I think that's ridiculous. On the other hand, of course, as a strong conservative, I too believe that, we don't want a situation where the government is going after people, especially journalists, for doing their job. We don't want a situation that the government is going after people for speech. That is very true. What is interesting, so I haven't yet formed an opinion on, should they have been issued the subpoenas, because I simply don't know anything more about the matter of that case, right? But what I think is fascinating, is that, the people who are freaking out because 4 or 5 journalists were issued a piece of paper that said, hey, we need you to come in and answer some questions. Right? These are the same people who simply have no regard for the Second Amendment. I think that's very, very, very funny, right? I think, it would have been awesome if I'd been just subpoenaed. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Wow. Poor baby, you got subpoenaed. That's just my instinctive reaction, because it's someone in government wants to ask you questions in an official setting, not in a basement or some bunker somewhere, but in front of, I believe it's a grand jury. Okay. Right. But again, these same people, it's just funny. I think, you can imagine all kinds of trolls that people on our side could come up with, right? The First Amendment isn't a suicide pact. You know what I'm saying? The right to free speech is not an unlimited right. It's got to have limits. Speech is very destabilizing, right? Ideas, the free flow of ideas can be very destabilizing to them, because actually, thinking about it, free speech can be destabilizing. Of course it can, right? The free exchange of ideas can be very destabilizing all the time. That is just true, right? But nonetheless, right, these people from the New York Times, and the New York Times as an organization is in its feelings right now, right? They're in their feelings. They're like, yeah, this is outrageous, and but it's again, when it comes to infringing on Second Amendment rights, these people go silent. Or if they do make a sound, it's a sound all in favor. Because, you know, the right to keep and bear arms is not an unlimited right. We don't have unlimited rights. All rights have limits. Okay, New York Times, all rights have limits. Great. Go answer the questions then. Go testify. You know, and just remembering that all rights have limits, and the First Amendment is not a suicide pact. How about that? You see? like you see how very easy that is. You know, so I mean, that's how I feel about that. I don't have all the information I'd like to have, but what does strike me is the irony, because for all I know, the government might have been completely out of line to issue those subpoenas. That may be the case, and I would have no problem saying, yeah, you know something, the government was out of line subpoenaing those journalists. I simply don't know. But again, what's interesting to me is that these people and this class of people and the people who kind of follow this class of people are very selective about the constitutional rights that they hold up as sacrosanct. You know, and it seems like, yeah, the First Amendment, they're all about that. Second Amendment, not that, like, could not care less. You know, I think that's just fascinating.
Yeah, to expand on your point, just to remind our audience how hypocritical the New York Times is when it comes to the Constitution, because yes, they are belly aching about the First Amendment, and they should. You know, First Amendment should be protected. It is our right to free speech. But they've been very critical about anything in regards to the Second Amendment, as far as expanding gun rights. One article, in particular, from July 7, 2026, reads, Trump administration guts efforts to prevent gun violence, suppressing reports. As the administration works to expand gun rights, hospitals and community groups have lost funding, and reports on preventing firearm injuries have vanished from government websites. So they're talking about the fact that Trump did away with the Biden era Office to Prevent Gun Violence.
Office of Gun Violence. That's right.
So that disappeared from the White House website because, again, you know, Trump had taken office in 2025. So this has been a whole year that this gun violence office has not been on the official White House website, but they just not reporting on it. There's several other articles that they have written. There's guns and gun control, gun deaths of children rose in states that have loose gun laws. There's several opinion pieces from the New York Times when it comes to firearm ownership and how it's hurting America and things like that. However, now the Second Amendment is a constitutional right, just like the First Amendment. In the eyes of the Constitution, these two amendments are within the Bill of Rights, and they are on the same playing field. They're all important in the eyes of the Constitution. However,
that's right.
The New York Times treat the First Amendment as it's supreme, as it's the supreme law over all other amendments within the Constitution, especially the Second Amendment.
I wouldn't even. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say the supreme law over anything else. I would say they only they have the amendments that they like. they there are parts of the Bill of Rights that they like, and parts they don't care about. That's what I would say. I'd say they like the First Amendment. They like they like the Fourth Amendment, which I do too.
Everyone should.
I'm kind of highly partial to all the and you've heard me, by the way. You've heard me take Republicans to task, right, for ignoring Fourth Amendment rights when people when statists, tough talking statists like Rudolph Giuliani decided to violate people's Fourth Amendment rights on an industrial scale. I have a huge problem with that.
Right. As well as you should.
But it's exactly right. But yeah, the New York Times, and I mean, we can dismiss the stuff, the things that appear in their op-ed column. Well, that's just it's op-ed, right? That's not. But you are right that the New York Times does have an editorial opinion, right? And they are in favor of so-called gun control. That's just a fact. The New York Times is not a pro Second Amendment paper, and so I just think
it's ironic.
It's funny, and we should, it's ironic. It's deeply ironic, And like I said, I'd love to be outside right now and just trolling people who are weeping on social media about the DOJ or whoever subpoenaing New York Times reporters. Right? It's like, I'd just say, well, listen, the Bill of Rights is not a suicide pact. Like, it's not an unlimited right. Speech is dangerous. Well, because speech is dangerous. Ideas are dangerous. Mm-hmm. Independent thought is dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just a fact. For that matter, freedom of conscience is dangerous. Freedom of religion is dangerous. All these things are dangerous. And the whole point of self-government, the whole point of us being a republic, where the people are sovereign, right? And where we have a limited government with enumerated powers, right? Is that yes, these things are dangerous, but it's not the job of government to protect us from all dangers everywhere all the time. It's not the role of government to protect us from ourselves or from our thoughts, right? And it's not the role of government to disarm us. It is absolutely not the role of government. The role of government is to enforce the criminal code, right? To protect the decent from the wicked to the extent they can, and so on and so forth. But they have to do so within the framework of respect for our fundamental human rights, which are not granted by the Constitution or by the Bill of Rights, but those rights are simply enshrined in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights. So, I think, like I said, I'd love to get some more information on this, but again, as far as I know, these reporters are not. Someone prove me. Someone keep me honest if I'm making a mistake here. But it seems to me that they're not necessarily under criminal investigation. They're merely being asked to. They've been asked to testify. So
let me play you a clip from ABC News on the story.
Yeah.
The New York Times says several of its journalists are facing subpoenas for their reporting on security concerns over the new Air Force One. The Qatari royal family gifted the Trump administration the $400 million luxury jet last year, and the Air Force spent months modifying it to meet the security, communications, and other needs. But sources tell ABC News the Secret Service urged President Trump to fly out of Turkey last week on the old Air Force One instead of the new plane out of an abundance of caution. The New York Times was first to report that. Now, the president said the change had nothing to do with security concerns, but he also reiterated that he's number one on the kill list for Iran. Now the Times says its reporters are being called to testify, quote, in regard to an alleged violation of federal criminal law. And the White House says, quote, reporters are not the targets. Those leaking classified information are. ABC News Washington Bureau Managing Editor Catherine Falders and ABC News legal contributor James Sample are here for more. How do you both?
So that's the gist of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, Trump is absolutely right. Trump has been the target of assassination for, since he was candidate Trump.
They stay trying to kill him. They stay trying to kill him. And I actually saw on the AP that they were running a story on Iran, and there was this photograph where there was a bunch of writing on this wall, and they were, I guess, celebrating they were observing the funeral of the late Ayatollah Khamenei, and one of the things like, I will kill Trump, it's like, yeah, I'm sure that there's a lot of people who would like to take his life. Now, that, of course, does not give him or the federal government, by extension, the right to trample on people's rights, right? Just because, okay. But again, you look at look at this. We have another president who was shot, right? This was Ronald Reagan, right? Back in, I guess it was the 1980s.
Yeah.
And the upshot of that was a significant kind of diminution of Second Amendment rights. And, while I don't have the New York Times archives in front of me, I would be willing to bet you folding money that the New York Times had no problem with that. None. Right? So, which is it? Like, are you, in other words, are you serious about constitutional rights? If so, then you got to be serious about all of them. And if you're not serious about all of them, then I don't take you seriously when you get weepy about just one of them. Sorry, I just don't. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, okay. You got subpoenaed. You got subpoenaed. You didn't get arrested. You didn't get raped. A SWAT team did not go to those reporters' houses and bust in the door, right, and lock them up. You know what I'm saying? And cart them off to jail. That's not what happened. They were asked to answer a subpoena. I mean, until I know more, unless I have something that really, that changes the whole landscape, I'm just not going to get weepy about that.
Like ABC News quoted Trump, and Trump said that he's not going after the reporting. He's going after those who leak classified information, that he was going to continue to use the old Air Force One to travel while the new Air Force One was being worked on.
Right.
So it's not really him going after them reporting it. It's, where did you get this information? They want to know.
Well, that's the way I'm reading it. Now, of course, they might say, well, we can't reveal our sources and this and there is some merit to that, right? It's like you don't want to have reporters revealing confidential sources just because the government asked them to. But the fact is that at the very least, you can be asked to give testimony.
Yeah.
Right. It's like whether or not you say who your source is a separate question. But the idea that the government never has the right to kind of ask you questions if it thinks that classified information has been leaked through you, that's kind of silly. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
it's a weird world we living in, man. Weird world we're living in.
Yes.
The fact that the New York Times is all butt hurt over the fact that they're being drug into court, not court, but drug in front of Congress to testify. Where did you get this classified information? But at the same time, they root for it. Well, not, I won't say root. That'll be a little too harsh. But they kind of like is okay with the fact that people like yourself has a whole, apprehension team show up at your apartment or at your residence, dragging you out of bed, pointing guns at you over the fact that
I would say they do. I would say they do report. Yes. I mean, not personally in my case, but they're all for that. Yes. They're 100% in favor of that.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. Yes.
I mean, that didn't make national news. The fact that you was going to
not even close. Thank you. Not even close.
That wasn't in the New York Times. They didn't report on that.
Nope. And they're not going to ever. That's my prediction. They're not going to report on it ever. Right.
But they look at the fact that if you was a black man who was exercising your First Amendment rights, and the federal government and the state government came to your door for doing that, pointing guns at you in the middle of the night, demanding that you go into custody with them, lock you up in at Rikers Island. You having to put your parents having to put their house up for collateral to get you out. Oh, that would be on national news. You would be on every news outlet there is. You would be like, you would have Al Sharpton and Benjamin Crump knocking down your door.
Oh yeah.
Just to talk to you,
right.
But because you're exercising your Second Amendment, and what's crazy is we had a conversation, me and our Second Amendment group, we had a conversation about you the other day, and how a lot of people who was initially on your side have gone quiet.
You have 1 minute left.
And the reason for that being is because, news cycles, they change every day. And, what happened to you happened a few years ago. We're going to continue talking about that on the other side of the break. So go ahead, Dexter, give us a call back. In the meantime, I'll continue the New York Times report from ABC News.
Sounds good.
The caller
Catherine,
has
what's
hung
the
up.
latest here?
Yeah, so according to the paper, according to the New York Times, which, as you mentioned, first reported this, their reporters have been issued subpoenas and that allegedly are requiring their testimony this Wednesday, July 15th, before a federal grand jury in Manhattan. Now, the paper said that in some of the cases, these subpoenas were hand-delivered to their doorstep by FBI agents. Now, the top lawyer for the New York Times issued a statement saying the appearance of agents on the doorstep of reporters should, quote, shock the conscience of any American who believes in the Constitution and the press freedom it protects. Now, we should note, as you mentioned, that the Department of Justice says the reporters aren't the target, that those who leak classified information are. But typically, these investigations into leaks of classified information are done internally first, and all mechanisms are exhausted, if you will, inside the government before there would be any action against a reporter. So we'll have to see how this works moving forward. But where this stands, at least the latest, is that these subpoenas contain very few details, according to the paper, but that they are asking the reporters to appear before a federal grand jury later this week.
James, how much protection does the First Amendment give journalists when they're reporting on sensitive national security matters?
Well, there's not necessarily a shield, which is to say that there is not a complete and total privilege for the reporters that prevents them from disclosing their sources or from being compelled to disclose sources. However, as Catherine just indicated, Diane, the circumstances required to get around the extraordinary protections that reporters have under the First Amendment do require an analysis. And there are a number of cases on point in terms of precedent, including in the instance of a prior restraint, which is not what this is, which a prior restraint is preventing them from publishing at all. That is itself a case involving the New York Times, involving the Pentagon Papers. The courts have traditionally been very, very reluctant to force reporters to testify about sources because even though the reporters themselves are not the target, targeting the reporters with these subpoenas produces a chilling effect. And that chilling effect is contrary to the First Amendment when you, especially here, where what you have is the government trying to prevent reporters from reporting on activity that is itself embarrassing to the government.
Catherine, how are lawmakers responding to this?
So we're hearing from Democrats at this point. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, for example, reporters have the right and duty to truth. Senator Chris Coon called this a slap in the face for the First Amendment and an attempt to silence journalists that the administration dislikes. I'm sure if the hearing for Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche moves forward, also scheduled to take place at this point on Wednesday, this will be a big topic of questioning for his confirmation hearing.
James, what are the next steps for these journalists now?
Well, the New York Times will, I'm sure, be considering the possibility of filing a motion to quash the subpoenas to prevent them from having to testify on Wednesday. The reporters are probably not able to plead the Fifth if they do go before the grand jury because the Fifth Amendment protects against self-incrimination. And
all right, we're back. We're back. You're back on the Hidden Path. Thank you for.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Dusty. Can you hear me?
Carlito.
Can you hear me?
You hear me? Hang on.
Hold on, everybody. While we get Dexter back.
Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2, 3.
Can you hear me?
Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2, 3.
So Dexter can't hear us right
check
now.
1, 2, 3.
We're gonna see what's going on here. Can you hear me, Dexter? Hold on. Maybe it's my phone. Can you hear me, Dexter?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Live radio, guys. Live radio.
All right. I'm going to drop and come back.
All right, man. Once again, you're listening to the Hidden Path. Hitting technical difficulties is more likely. Again, we're sitting here talking about the New York Times, belly aching over the fact that they are being pulled into testimony before Congress, I believe it is, or I don't believe it's before court, but before Congress, testifying to talk about the fact that they are leaking classified information in regards to Air Force One. Trump got a new plane from the country of Qatar. This plane will serve as his, as his Air Force One. The plane was being retrofitted with security measures that is common on Air Force One. So the New York Times have reported that Trump was going to use the old plane that he had been using that has been used for decades now. Until that new plane was finished being retrofitted. And apparently that was classified information. And the New York Times reported on that. Which, yikes, right? I mean, Trump has been the target of assassination. And there's a country in Iran who really wants his head. So therefore, I can understand the administration being upset and want to know
Dexter.
where
call from
Dexter Taylor.
where this
incarcerated
leaked information is coming from. So that's what me and Dexter is talking about right now. I'm glad you guys are listening. You're listening to the Hidden Path.
Since they are not the targets, it may not offer much protection for them here. They may be granted immunity, but even then, the reporters may be very reluctant to reveal their sources. You know, the word security, and this is quoting from that Pentagon Papers case that I referenced earlier. This is Hugo Black's famous concurrence in that decision. He wrote, quote, "The word security is a broad, vague, general."
All right, we're back. Can you hear me now, Dexter?
Carlito.
Can you hear me?
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I don't know what's going on.
Testing 1, 2. Well, that's interesting.
Can you hear me?
I cannot hear you. Oh, now I can hear you. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on. Hold on a second. I'm gonna try to put you back with the roadcaster.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Check 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Hold on.
Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Can you hear me?
Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Can you hear me, Dexter? Hold on. Why is this not working? Hold on.
He needs some milk.
Apologize, everyone. Let's reconnect the Bluetooth and see if that works. I tried to do a wire connection, but that's still not working. Give us 1 second. Can you hear me, Dexter?
Yes, I can.
All right, we're back, everybody. I don't know what happened.
All right.
But we're back and rocking. That happens sometimes, everybody. I apologize for the inconvenience.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways.
The magic of technology.
Yeah, the magic of technology. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So, again, like I said to everybody, just bear with us. This shit happens sometimes. Hold on a second. Let me test something.
So
else.
we were talking about these we talk about hypocritical New York Times.
Yeah, we're still talking about that. We were talking about the fact that you know, when it came to what you went through, you know, you're from the time you was initially arrested, your trial, the fact that you're now serving 10 years in prison for what essentially boils down to a processing crime. Yeah, a processing.
Non-crime.
Yeah, non-crime, non-issue, non-violent crime. But the state of New York.
I would say not even a. Yeah.
The state
it's a violent crime. I would say it's not even. I wouldn't even call it a non-violent crime because it is a non-crime. They actually made up a crime.
Actually, I would disagree.
Made up.
I would disagree. Mm-hmm. It's not a crime on your part.
It's not a crime on your part.
It's a crime on the state of New York. Because I believe they violated your Second Amendment rights, which, in my opinion, is a crime.
What I'm saying is, but what I'm saying is that I am locked up. In other words, I did not. People, the reason I go so hard on this because people say, "Well, Dexter Taylor committed a victimless crime." No, I committed no crime. It is a non-crime. Yeah. They made up a crime, right? having given up on the idea of actually policing our streets and going after the people who were shooting up the place and subjecting decent people to all kinds of unpleasantness and misery. They've given up on going after those people, and they've decided that the best thing for them to do is to go after law-abiding citizens for exercising their rights. And so, yes, New York State has done this. Other states are in the business of doing it as well. Minnesota is very much on that program. Our friend Walker Anderson beat his case last year. I believe it was last year.
It was.
Yeah, thank God, but yeah, New York Times, by the way, New York Times didn't care about that either, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think they wrote anything about his case.
No, and what's funny is that the New York Times, very sensitive newspaper, right? They love to talk about the plight of the minority. You are a minority. You are a man who is a minority, and you've had your civil rights violated. But yet,
they don't care about those civil rights.
There's no op-ed about you in the New York Times. There's no critical article about the Biden administration, not the Biden administration, but the Hochul administration. And her approach towards your civil rights and other New Yorkers. It's not just you. There's other New Yorkers who's incarcerated over various firearm violations. So, where's the New York Times with that? Like, even Chuck Schumer has come out and said that, the subpoena of these journalists is a mark on the Trump administration towards the First Amendment. I need to get his exact quote. Chuck Schumer.
Who said that? Of course Chuck Schumer said that. I mean, come on.
Yeah, Chuck Schumer, the man who grills burgers with cheese that is still wrapped in the plastic. This man.
Huh?
You didn't hear about that?
No, what happened?
Chuck Schumer, I forget when it was, but I think it was for the 4th of July, not this past 4th of July, but like a couple of years ago. He wanted to show that he was like every other American, and he was grilling cheeseburgers. And people, eagle-eye viewers, saw that the cheeseburger, the cheese that he was using for the cheeseburgers was still wrapped in plastic.
Nah.
Yeah.
You lying.
No.
What? Oh my God.
He was the butt of jokes for weeks.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. He just took out a slice of American cheese and popped it on that.
Yeah, and they were comparing it to when Elizabeth Warren was allegedly drinking beer, and people was like, well, we don't believe you.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Tony's the man of the people. Yeah.
Let's see. What did Chuck say?
That's hilarious. Jesus.
So Chuck Schumer said Donald Trump is one of the weakest, most thin-skinned individuals in the world I ever seen. Chuck Schumer slams DOJ subpoena of New York Times reporters on Air Force One security story. So that's what Chuck Schumer said.
Okay. I mean, again, I would like to have more information on what what the context is. But look, pulling back for a second, right? I mean, Air Force One, or that the actual the jetliner that the Air Force have converted, is meant to be like a mobile command headquarters, right? And the purpose, the kind of customized Qatari aircraft, same thing. That's going to be a flying command headquarters. So it is arguable that if someone's disseminating classified information or sensitive information about that kind of asset, right, then that's going to be of concern to a rational government. Now, does that mean that, quote unquote, the DOJ is in the right? I don't know, right? Because again, I don't have enough context. But again, I don't think this is enough to people over, right? That they're simply being called to answer questions. That's, come on, stop it.
That's all. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all it really is. Nobody's getting arrested. They're just, it's just you're answering questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, let's look at it like this. If there was a person who was making, let's say, just making firearms, right? Which is their legal right to do. And the DOJ or the state DOJ was subpoenaed that person to testify. Okay, you've been accused. It's been reported that you were selling these guns illegally. We want to know that if you're selling these guns illegally. That's the premise of it. That's the premise of the subpoena. The New York Times would not sit here and be bellyaching that a person who been accused of selling firearms illegally is now being subpoenaed to go testify before the state.
Well, remember, it's like if it's a subpoena, it's not even an accusation. They're just like, we want to know. Let's say we want to know where you got these parts, or what you're doing with these firearms, or why you're building them, or what have you, right? Because if they accuse you of a crime, they don't send you a subpoena. They write out an arrest warrant.
Right.
So, but I see what you mean, and I think you're right. Yeah, of course, New York Times wouldn't care about that. Just they didn't care about the other thing, but they didn't care about what actually happened. So, and the funny thing is I can't really, at the end of the day, I do really care about the First Amendment, and I do really care about the First Amendment rights.
Everybody
of New York Times reporters as well. It's just, yes, but it's just that I really, it's like the weeping and the gnashing of teeth is just a little bit much. It's just like, and again, I think I would feel, maybe this is a failing on my part, but I think I would feel a little bit more sympathetic to them if they had really shown themselves to be all in on all our constitutional rights.
Right.
Right. If it was some kind of paper where it's like, these guys have been there for us, whatever it is, whether it's the Great Violent Freakout or whether it's the, Second Amendment or, what have you, these guys are consistently like on the ball in terms of liberty and the rights that are enshrined in the Constitution. I think I'd at least feel some more solidarity with the New York Times and with their people. But I mean, I'm sorry, the New York Times is pretty much like a legacy of a managerial class, and that's kind of that's their thing, right? They're not really. They may be the paper of record, but they're not the paper of the people, not even close. You
can't be part-time.
So, that's it.
And I'll say this to both Democrats and Republicans. You can't be part-time on the Constitution.
That's right. Can't be part-time.
Like it's
all part-time.
Like it's either you support and will defend the Constitution, or you only defend the Constitution when it benefits your side, which is not defending it at all.
Exactly. Right. Correct.
So,
yeah,
that's where I am with that.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Because I support the First Amendment as well. I even when it don't benefit me, like. Even hate speech, I defend it, because what's hate speech to me may not be hate speech to someone else, and vice versa. So,
right. And by the way, anyone has the right to hate me or hate my ethnic group and say so. Yeah. Everyone has the right to do that.
Yeah.
Right. They don't have the right to come after me kinetically, but they got the right to hate me.
Yeah.
Or my ethnic group. Absolutely. You know, and to say so in public. You know, and what I'll do is I'll disagree with them, you know, in public, right? Outside, you know, so they got a stupid idea, what have you. Help with the stupid opinion. But it's like, I don't want the government going after people because they said nasty things about black folks. No, I won't have that. No. You know? But again, you know, when it comes to the New York Times, you know, that's not the caliber of people we're talking about. It's like that.
Yeah, it's
They're
clear.
Not really serious about,
Yeah, it's clear to me that the New York Times is not really principled in their belief in what.
Nope.
Even when it comes to the First Amendment, because there's a lot of things that they say about MAGA that they say about conservatives in general, not just MAGA, that will go against what the First Amendment is.
Sure.
But moving on, we at the top of the hour once again. We're going to end the show talking about someone who passed recently. You guys know him by the name of Lindsey Graham. He passed over the weekend from an apparent heart attack. He went into cardiac arrest. He had just got back from on Friday from a trip to the Ukraine, where he was meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine president. He served 30 years in Congress. I think in 2002 he ran for Senate. So he's been in the Senate since 2002. Recently, his sister has been appointed to finish out his term. His term ends was to end in January. He was running for re-election, so the governor is getting ready to hold a special primary to nominate a candidate to run against the Democrat challenger in South Carolina. What are your thoughts on the life and work of Lindsey Graham? Justin.
Well, I have to say I don't know too much about his life beyond. I did read something in the AP Newswire today about his relationship with his sister. Apparently, both of them lost their parents at a relatively early age, and he really stepped up and took care of his sister. He joined the armed forces. Made sure that she was well situated, paid for her to be, well placed and what have you. At a certain point in his armed forces career, I believe he adopted his sister so that if he died, she would get his benefits, right? And just really, stepped up and looked out for her his whole life. And I gotta say, like, in terms of, that, to me, that is the most important thing to be said about his life. And I've got nothing but respect for that. That's hardcore. That's the real thing right there, because I think nothing's more important than family, so, he really stepped up and took care of his family, in the form of his sister, and she actually, married and had kids, and I believe now has grandkids and what have you. He, by contrast, never married, never had kids. Okay, so that to me, I think that's in my opinion, as a conservative, that's the most important thing about his life. Die-hard family man in the realest sense there is. Now, as far as his work is concerned, I really first became familiar with Lindsey Graham when he was cheerleading the second war in Iraq, and, the more I kind of paid attention to him, the more I found out that, well, he kind of he's got a thing for these foreign interventions. He loves these foreign interventions. And that's where, he and I really parted ways. I mean, I don't know I don't know where that comes from. I was never able to get a sense of, what his philosophy is of kind of international interventions, philosophy of war and peace, his philosophy of, when you should go to war and when you should not, right? And in that sense, he's not for a lot of people, especially a lot of people that seem to have very low thresholds for going to war. They don't seem to have any clear philosophy on, when is it a good idea to go to war? When is it unavoidable? When should you not? When should you do something else? And I think he had an attachment to the state of Israel that is, or an affinity for the state of Israel that I think was and is untoward and unbecoming in a representative of this government, right? Israel is a sovereign nation. They've got their government, right? Their government is the job of the people in the Knesset, right? And the president, prime minister, is to look out for that country's interests, and well, they should. They asked for that job. Wonderful. Okay. The job of American politicians, American congressmen, is to look out for the interests of the American people, first and foremost. And this kind of sentimental attachment to another nation is it's something I don't agree with. And that's without having any particular thing against that nation. It's just that they've got people over there whose job it is to look out for them. Great. Our people who look out for us, right? And that's it. So, if that makes me an America firster, then so be it. But that's where I am on it. So, a bit of a warmonger, a bit too loose with let's take military action over here and there. But again, he was not unique in that. A lot of people have that disease in Washington. So
you can pretty much say that about a lot of people in Washington.
Oh yeah, exactly.
What are your thoughts on his sister being named interim South Carolina senator?
Well, I don't know what her background is, so I couldn't say in terms of qualifications, but
Democrats are arguing that she's not really qualified for the job.
Yeah, well, look, this is an appointment, right? So the idea of, at the end of the day, right, if you're appointing someone to replace someone who was democratically elected, then at the end of the day, you've just got to wait for the next, the real, the exceptional thing is the appointment, not the qualifications of the person. The exceptional thing is that someone has just chosen somebody. Like it wouldn't be, in other words, it wouldn't necessarily be better if the governor, right, I think it was the governor who chose the person.
It was.
The governor of South Carolina chose, right?
Yeah, it was the governor.
Right. So, what if he chose someone who was quote unquote qualified? Would that be any better? No, because the fact is, he is a representative. Lindsey Graham was a representative chosen by the people, and if he goes away, the people have to choose again, right? Mm-hmm. So qualifications, plenty of highly qualified people do a shitty job in Washington anyway. I don't think it's that big a deal. There'll be an election soon enough, and then the South Carolinians will choose who they want to represent them in Washington, and life will go on. That's it.
Any concern that because he died, that puts the Democrat challenger at an advantage over whoever they are scrambling to choose with so little time before the midterm?
Good question. I simply don't know, because I don't know anything about the Democratic challenger, and I don't know anything about who would actually run for that seat, right?
Mm-hmm.
South Carolina, thankfully, seems pretty red, right? You never know these days, but
yeah.
So I don't think there's that much to worry about. I just, I think it's probably fine. I don't know. Yeah, that's what I would say.
That would like always be my concern whenever like you had someone die who's running for office, especially if they've been a individual who's held that office for an extended period of time, like in Lindsey Graham's case, it's over 30 years. As far as the Senate office, over 20 years. But that will always be my concern, because there may be people who don't know that the person has died. I have a lot of elderly friends who don't really watch the news. They see this new person and they're like, who the hell is this? I'm not voting for this person.
Right.
So that will always be my concern.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, well, that's the job of the state party, right? To get out there and to canvass, send mails, make phone calls, send emails, what have you, right? To let people know this is who's on the ballot, right? And why.
Yeah, but I don't trust it. I don't trust the Republican Party these days when it comes to like campaigning and actually getting out there.
Well, we're talking about the state level party in South Carolina, which I don't know anything about. And look, yeah, you're right. Certainly the national GOP hasn't done very much to cover itself in glory. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, because that's going to be the process. Right? There's nothing we can really do about that. That's going to be it. If conservatives in South Carolina feel as you do, then what they should do is take it upon themselves to get access to voter rolls, right? And to inform their fellow Carolinians what the deal is, right? And what's at stake. And, this person's no longer on the ballot. You don't see his name on the ballot. Here's why, such and such. And so that's what grassroots conservatives are there for. So people who feel as you do, and by the way, with good reason. I mean, you have every reason not to trust, not to trust the GOP. But people down there who feel as you do, well, they've never had a better set of free tools for reaching out to people and explaining the situation, right, and getting the vote out. So that's what I would say. Go do the work.
We shall see. We shall see with Mr.
Yes, sir.
Rest in peace to Mr. Lindsey Graham. I mean, it was a shock to me. I heard it was first broken in the middle of the night that he had passed. I mean, I remember just waking up, had a dialysis cramp. Those of you who are on dialysis know what that means. And I just happened to look at my phone because I was having a rough time trying to go back to sleep. I saw that he had passed, and I'm just like, wow, that is not the senator that I thought was going to be announced that passed on. Mitch McConnell is also in the news. There's memes and stuff going on about him because, Mitch McConnell can't release a photo as a proof of life because it was widely speculated that he had died and that, the Republican Party was covering it up.
Hiding it.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So Mitch McConnell is still alive and well. Well, I wouldn't say well. He's alive. He is currently in a hospital. It's been reported that a few weeks ago, he had failed, and that's why he's in the hospital right now. And they was trying to keep that under wraps. So, thoughts on Mitch McConnell?
You have 1 minute left.
Well, we'll get your thoughts on the other side of the break.
So many thoughts. Yeah. All right. I'll be right back.
All right. Once again, everybody, you're listening to
the caller has hung up.
The Hidden Path with Carvin Mike. We're talking about Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell. We're going to get Dexter's thoughts on Mitch McConnell, the senator, once he returns. He had to disconnect for a little bit because, his 30-minute call is up. He only gets 30 minutes each call, so that's why he keeps hanging up and calling back, in case anybody's wondering. We bring you this show every Monday at 7 p.m. It is Tuesday right now. In case you listen to this post live broadcast. Special day today. And the reason why is because yesterday was my mother-in-law's birthday. So, yeah. Anyways, hope everybody is doing good. Hope everybody is nice and cool. Because, man, this heat wave that we got going on is brutal. It was pretty good today. It was about 83 degrees today. That's because it's been storming all day. So, we had that. Here in Florida, that happens all the time. Like 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. There's, your occasional thunderstorm that kind of looks like a monsoon at times. And me and my family was, just chilling. We enjoy the storms. Hope if you ever visit Florida, you'll know what I'm talking about. Visit Florida in the summer, you'll know what I'm talking about. These storms can be brutal, but if you're on the inside, if you're chilling on the inside of your house, it can be very, very relaxing. Oh, my son likes them. My little 1-year-old son, he likes them. He's not a normal baby. He's not no little softy. He enjoys what I like to call dangerous things. He's a dangerous baby. My friend Doc likes to call him Myrtle Baby because he's almost killed me a couple of times. Not on purpose, of course. Man, being a father is so cool, man. Having a little thing that loves you and respects you and, wants to be just like you is amazing. Getting a little personal there on a hidden path. But yeah, being a father, I take very serious. Protecting my son from the dangers of the world, I take very serious. I can't even look at stories in which a child has been hurt. It makes me think of my son, and I just can't take it. Yeah, I'm looking at my son right now in his bassinet on his little nanny cam, sleeping while daddy is
Dexter.
helping a friend out by doing this show. So glad he understands. He really doesn't, but it is what it is. I'll make it up to him tomorrow when we go play. That's just coming back, everybody. Just give us a second. Right, I can't continue the conversation about Mitch McConnell.
You may start the conversation now.
All right, we are back again, everyone. You're listening to the Hidden Path. So,
yes, sir,
Mr. Carvin Mike, Mitch McConnell, the longtime Kentucky senator, is in the news. Health concerns. People thought he was dead, but over the weekend, proof of life. Mitch McConnell is currently in a hospital. What are your thoughts on old Mitch?
I don't have very much again, I don't have very much background on him, you know. Yeah, I just, you know, he's, you know, legacy G, that type of figure, right? You know, here's what's interesting, right? Here's what's interesting to me. You know, forgetting about Mitch McConnell in particular for a second. When we think about all the ways in which you know, the far left has kind of eroded our institutions and kind of all the damage that's caused by far left and then kind of far left so-called values in our system. That damage has been going on for a while. Like it's not like, you know, we woke up one morning and you know, people didn't know what a woman was because they weren't biologists. It wasn't like that. These things happened over time. Now, what is interesting is that really everyone in the legacy GOP has some, you know, has to bear some blame for that, right? You know, what were our conservatives? What was the so-called conservative party doing while all these things were going on, while our rights were being eroded, while our Second Amendment rights were being trampled on, among other rights? You know what I'm saying? While the public education system and the higher education system was turned into a system for left-wing indoctrination. What were conservatives doing all this time? Not much, obviously. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. For the most part, they seem to kind of go along with the program. You know, they might have made some token noises here and there, but pretty much it was not a fight. It was not a fight until Trump came to office, which I think is fascinating, right? And Trump, I've argued before, and I maintain still that he's not, you know, as we understand conservatism, he is not really strictly a conservative. What he is more like a disruptor, you know. And he came in and started flipping tables, and then it was the whole thing. And by the way, the same legacy GOP, you remember in Trump's first term, the legacy GOP really couldn't stand him. Nope. Right? It's like there's all these, right?
Never Trumpers.
GOP heads, all these old, right? Never Trumpers. All these old, these conservative commentators, you know, the Washington insiders, you know what I'm saying, neocons. They couldn't stand him. But again, it was under their watch that all the things they complain about that the left has done to American society, that all those things actually happened. It was on their watch, right? So that's kind of the bucket I put Mitch McConnell in. He's part of the legacy GOP. And so, you know, what I am hoping is that, you know, eventually all these legacy GOP figures are going to move on. They'll retire, they'll pass away, what have you. What really needs to happen is that.
You think they're retired?
Pardon me?
You think they will retire? I think a lot of them wants to ride this thing until they pass.
They'll either retire or they'll pass away. Like I said, one or the other. They're not going to be there forever. And so when they move on, one way or another, right? Mm-hmm. What needs to happen is that, you know, a new generation of conservatives that knows how to do outreach, that knows how to talk to young people, right? That knows how to go and find the votes in the orthodox places, right? Mm-hmm. That knows how important it is to take the cities back, right? The new generation of conservatives are going to really play a much more important part in the party. And by the way, this doesn't just mean excuse me, people like McConnell. It also means, you know, Republican committee chairs all around the country, right? Many of whom are also just legacy. They're just old school. They're not interested in actually getting in the fight. They're interested in just kind of maintaining the status quo and just getting along, and that's it, you know. I remember, you know, we tried to reach out to to reach out to some local Republican officials in New York State, and nothing. We've never heard a peep back, and it wasn't surprising. I wasn't surprised at all. I didn't have any real expectation to hear back from them, or that they would take any interest in a Second Amendment case like mine. But out of due diligence, we did our outreach. But they're not interested, and that tells you something about the mentality of some of these people. I mean, in a state like New York, it's not like the Republicans have some high position to lose. It's not as if it's not as if they'd be gambling. Well, we don't want to gamble away our majority. They have no majority. It's like Republicans in New York State, Republicans in the New York State legislature can't bust a grape unless Democrats say okay. You know what I'm saying? The state is firmly in control of Democrats. So you would think, well, you have nothing to lose. I mean, it's funny. I remember that was one of the things that Trump reportedly said to kind of the black electorate, what he's got to lose. That's what I would say to some of these Republicans in blue states. What do you have to lose? You might as well speak up for your actual conservative beliefs. You might as well go out on a limb every now and then. You might as well make some noise. You might as well, right? Because what have you got to lose? You're nowhere. But these legacy figures are happy to be. They're nowhere, and they're happy to be nowhere. They're not going to make waves. Now, McConnell, of course, is in a different situation. He was very influential in Congress, but again, at the end of the day, if you look at all these influential Republicans who've been influential for years and years, it still turns out that we're not in great shape, and we're not in great shape partially because so much of the ground has been ceded to liberals and progressives over the years, and that happened on the watch of people like Mitch McConnell, and for that matter, Lindsey Graham and others. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it makes me mad, the fact that we got so many conservatives who argue like, well, there's no reason to campaign in blue states that are predominantly Democrat voters who are predominantly Democrat. They're not going to vote for us anyways, because it's such a weak mindset, in my opinion.
Yep.
But
it is.
People are stuck in their ways, I guess.
Yeah. And that's why that I'm looking forward to what the next generation of conservatives chooses to do.
No, there's a lot of young conservatives. There's a lot of young conservatives who are fed up with what the establishment is. The fact that they don't compete. There's a lot of young conservatives who want to compete, who don't buy that noise that they're not going to vote for us anyways.
Right. Yeah. We need more of that spirit of like, let's go out there and let's compete. Let's go out there and fight. Worst that can happen is you can lose, but let's get out there. Yeah.
Some will argue it's a money thing of why they don't want to compete. They don't want to waste their war chest in a state or city that is not going to vote for them anyways.
I mean, look, it's like, that's, that's an argument for spending less, maybe, in places where you think you might lose. That's not an argument for spending nothing. And by the way, let's forget about campaigns for a second. What's happening between election years, right? You know what I'm saying? Okay, campaigns are big and expensive, and okay, that's one thing, right? Okay, what's happening in terms of outreach between election years? Outreach is not that expensive. I mean, we're in the age of the internet. Come on now. Outreach has never been cheaper, right? organizing some kind of conservative ideas tour where prominent conservative thinkers, we don't have many of those, but, get to go around and actually talk about ideas and how conservative ideas and how conservative approach can be good for the growth and prosperity of cities. You could do that and not spend that much money, right? Are they interested in that? No, not at all.
Of course not.
Right. So, the campaign expenditures argument only carries so much weight because spending money in campaigns is only one way to take the fight to the enemy. Just think about this for a second, right? The fact that liberal and progressive ideology has taken over so many institutions in the United States, it didn't take over all those institutions, right, by winning elections, right? Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, like, it's like the reason why so many of these institutions are kind of liberal and progressive to their rotten core is not because someone won elections. It's because someone understood the importance of spreading ideas and winning hearts and minds, and these are things that, especially in the age of the internet, is very cheap and easy to do. But you have to decide that that's important. You have to decide that it's important to let people know what you're about, And by the way, you also have to have some ideas, and you have to have some ideas other than more police and more firefighters. It's like, okay, that's nice, but it's like if you're never talking about grassroots prosperity, if you're never talking about the working poor, if you're never talking about removing the friction involved in turning abilities and assets and skill sets into prosperity, if all you're ever doing is when there's a police shooting, you're for the police, right? That's part of the conservative brand, and that's a problem because you built that brand, right? You weren't interested in saying, well, yeah, people in these neighborhoods need better policing, but what does better policing mean, really? What does it mean? It means you're working in partnership with the people who live in these places, right? There's all kinds of things you can address in terms of, from policing to again the concept of micro capitalism. Capitalism works better when there's lots of small capitalists. Getting grassroots deregulation, right? All this deregulation, you hear Republicans come up for deregulation when it comes to like coal-fired power plants. Okay, fair enough. What about deregulation when it comes to some poor son of a bitch who wants to start a food truck? Right? How much does he have to pay to get that going? And can we decrease that friction? Can we decrease the friction of, well, you have to have a certificate if you're going to cut hair in your living room, to make money on the side? Right? It's like these are things that have been there forever. Conservatives can talk about them. In conservative ideology, we have something to say about these things. We have respect in the same measure, right, that we have contempt for the ideology of Azor Mangani. We have respect, or we're supposed to have respect, right, for the ability and the desire of ordinary people to get out there and get after it. Yeah, and we want to make it easier for them, not harder. Right? Have we bothered to go and tell them so? No. That's a problem. That's a problem. And then when you don't win at the ballot box, you say, "Oh, the Republicans have a brainwashing machine." No, they don't. They just have the desire, they just have the will to get out there and fight, to go after those hearts and minds. They have the will, and you don't. Okay, well, that's the way it is with conflict, right? If your opponent has the will and has the ambition and has the drive, and you don't, well, you're probably going to lose. That's it. And it's so funny because it's like the thing that conservatives are always saying to people about, initiative and drive and self-determination and what have you. They don't apply it to themselves in this way, No, I can't think of many people who cry more than conservatives when they lose at the polls. It's like, stop crying and get after it. This is a fight, So, yeah, that's what it is.
Hell, what else is on your mind, man, besides this?
Well, let's see. What have we been? Oh, you know something? Well, I noticed something very interesting. I noticed this a while ago, like I think it was a month or so ago when I first heard about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders teaming up to push this idea of let's stop building data centers. And since then, that idea kind of right,
yeah.
right, that's big, right? And then since then, other people have picked it up. And just recently, I read that Kathy Hochul signed some executive order placing a moratorium on the building of large data centers in New York State. Now, the funny thing is that no one is trying to build large data centers in New York State because the government of New York State has made the environment very hostile to capital of all kinds. You know what I'm saying? Like, people don't want to build stuff in New York State. Why? That you can go someplace where they actually want you to build stuff. Go to Ohio, go to Tennessee, go to Florida, go to Texas. Who the hell would come to New York State and say, "Oh, this is a great place to start building stuff"? No. So I just think it's hilarious that she's virtue signaling, obviously, but I think that's a very interesting development, and in one sense, I'm of two minds about it. I mean, of course, I'm in favor of data centers as such, right? Because I think even after this AI bubble, and it is obviously a bubble, right? After this AI bubble bursts, if you're building out real stuff, if you're building out real infrastructure, then someone will buy up that infrastructure and make it profitable in some other way. You know what I'm saying? And that's good, right? But I think on the one hand, I do blame a lot of these Silicon Valley types for being terrible with their messaging. And we can talk about that. But they've been terrible with their messaging. And then, speaking of people who like to cry, that's a thing. Okay, so they're bad with their messaging. And then, and you've got these lefties who are basically like, we don't want to see anything that looks like it might turn into, prosperity and lots of jobs. So we're going to shut it down, And then, of course, you have the general kind of lack of understanding of technology that is a special hallmark of the left. So really, the whole thing is like a perfect storm. But let's just talk about this AI thing for a second. So-called AI. I've always been a skeptic of so-called AI, mostly not because I thought not because I thought it wasn't at all a capable technology, a capable family of technologies, but because I thought what people were saying about it was overblown. And as time goes on, we are finding now that most of these claims all these claims really have been overblown, right? So now when people say AI, what are they talking about? Mostly they're talking about these things called large language models. A large language model is a piece of distributed software. It runs across many different computers, typically concentrated together in a cluster data center, right? And essentially it is a kind of an engine for a certain kind of what you might call like statistical reasoning, right? And by reasoning, I don't mean that it's human or that it's like a human that is thinking. I just mean that, for example, in the databases that I've used during pretty much all my career, right, relational databases, where most of the world's business data is stored, right? Those databases use a kind of a set theory reasoning, right, to answer questions, right? And so if you have business data in that kind of database, the kind of questions you're asking are kind of like, well, show me the set of this that also belongs to that set, or show me the set of X that have these characteristics. Like if you call a hotel to make a reservation and someone types into some system, at the end of the day, there's a question, there's a set theory question going, show me the list of hotel rooms at this location that are not already reserved and that are vacant. You see what I'm saying? And then maybe you can, narrow it down. You call to make a reservation on an airline, same thing. At the end of that whole chain, right, there was some kind of set theory reasoning happens. Show me all the seats on this particular flight that happen to be vacant, and then, okay, the person went to window seat. Let's see all the ones that are window seats, so on and so forth. Okay, so now, large language models are more like engines that can, based on having sucked in a huge amount of data from the internet, right, can answer questions by piecing together words, right, using this kind of statistical reasoning. What's the word that's most likely to be the proper one? Which word goes next? And then they can create whole documents like this. And these things, these engines, right, require a lot of manual intervention. There's lots of human work involved. Behind the scenes, there's people labeling data and what have you, and cleaning and curating data. They don't like to talk about that, but that is happening, right? And there's a whole lot of scraping of public information. In other words, sucking up all the information that human beings have put out on the internet. And then there's this whole process of training this model, right? That is, tweaking it and adjusting it very many times over the course of hours or days or weeks, so that it can then infer. So then you can give it a prompt, like tell me the world's 10 biggest oil producing countries, and just give you that list, or whatever it is, right? Now, those engines right now have to run on a lot of machines that are kind of collected together in one place, a data center. Those data centers require a lot of electricity. And many of these companies who are running these data centers or building them have agreed to kind of build their own power plants to support the data centers. So they're not taking power from the local grid. But then there's a problem from the environmentalists. So you're burning fossil fuels and so on and so forth. Many of these places, all of these places have to be cooled, because when computers are running, modern high-speed computers, they generate lots of heat. The heat has to be taken away. They have to be cooled. And, they say, well, they're taking away water from the community. And some of this is accurate. Some of it is most of it is overblown, right? But the problem, I think one problem why what these AI companies are experiencing so much friction is because, they have yet to really make something that's good that ordinary people really want. AI right now appears to be most valuable inside large businesses where you have to write a lot of code. And there are these AI systems that can generate code for programmers. So you have someone who can prompt a large language model to generate code and then tweak the code, correct it, what have you. It makes already competent programmers more productive. Okay. But that's an inside baseball thing. In terms of like the making life better for the average person, or in terms of creating a killer app, like a product that people just have to have, AI has just not done that. Okay. Think back to the iPhone. Like when the iPhone came out, people were like, "Oh, I got to get me one of those," and it became this thing. They made something that people really wanted. And I think because AI companies have not really made anything that people have wanted, they've made lots of things that have been borderline creepy, borderline like, yeah, let's have more surveillance so we can get more data. And, and people are already feeling a way about surveillance. And so, yeah, they don't have the social permission to do the kind of things they want to do. And on top of that, the CEOs of these AI companies just say all kinds of outrageous. We're going to eliminate all the jobs. All the jobs are going to go away. You're going to sit at home. And one, that's stupid and wildly overblown. Nothing like that is going to happen. But also, it's like is that your sales pitch? Is that your sales pitch? Like you're going to be unemployed very soon, and it's great. That's a terrible sales pitch. Stop that. And then even worse, and I've met this type, right? These Silicon Valley types who love their grand pronouncements, and they think that somehow technology is kind of this thing that allows them to act as if governments are not a thing. So this company called Anthropic, which makes a lot of the more successful and more popular code generation large language models to help programmers like me, some time ago they were like, hey, we think we've created a software super weapon that's so powerful, it's going to be a threat that they build it as if we think we may have created a piece of software that can blow through half the security in the world's systems. They made it like they made it sound like this apocalyptic thing, right? And they said this thing we've made is so powerful that this new AI we've made is so powerful we can't even release it, right? And then sometime later they said, okay, we've got this other thing now which is less powerful. We put it on we added guardrails to it so it's safer. And then sometime after that they said, whoopsie. They said, whoopsie, it seems to have broken through the guardrails. And at that point, the Trump administration was like, hey, shut that down right now. And all these Silicon Valley types and all these kind of techie liberals, the type, podcasters and so on, they were like, oh, the Trump administration is anti-technology and what have you. And it's like, okay, none of you people know how government actually works. Like, bro. Like you said, you created a software super weapon. I didn't say it. Trump didn't say it. You said it, right? And then you said, "Oh yeah, we made it safe." And then you said, "Whoops."
You have 1 minute left.
This thing we made, this super weapon, bypassed the safety measures. And then I believe, from my information, the Trump White House actually called the guy, the CEO of Anthropic, and he was on a wellness retreat. What? Shut this shit down right now. You know what I'm saying? So it's funny having come up in this industry, seeing these people kind of muddle their way through this stuff, and they're really terrible at making a case for themselves with the public and with Washington.
Wow.
Yeah, that's yeah. And I'll continue rant after I come back. Hang on.
All right. All right, everybody. You're listening to the Hidden Path with Carbon Mike. This will be our last phone call from that cell of the night. After 11 o'clock, he can no longer place a phone call to me, so this will be the last one. I hope everybody's been enjoying the show tonight. Despite the technical difficulties that we had early on, I do apologize for that. That's not typical of our show. Our show is usually more cleaner than this. But, things happen. But I appreciate everybody for sticking with us through those difficult times. If you're interested in listening to the show or want to check out some past episodes, you can go to our YouTube channel, which is The Hidden Path with Carbon Mike. Exactly how you see it on the graphic here. If you're listening to us on Twitter, yeah, just go over to YouTube. But if you don't want to go to YouTube, we're also on X. And you can look through the media section and you can find episodes of our show. Man, it has been a night. I do enjoy my conversations with Dexter. He teaches a lot. I mean, the man is a natural teacher. I'm sure he really enjoys that.
Dexter.
He's calling back, everybody. So I'll talk to you on the other side of the break.
An incarcerated individual at New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. This call is subject to recording and monitoring. An incarcerated individual's use of institutional telephones constitutes consent, and your calls may be provided to law enforcement agencies. To accept this free call, press 1. To refuse this free call, press. Preventing suicide is important. If you have concerns during this call, please contact the individual's facility to communicate with them. Thank you for using Securus. You may start the conversation now.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to The Hidden Path with Carbon Mike.
Mm-hmm.
So you was just going on a you was getting amped up. You was on a long rant, but you're educating us on these Silicon Valley types.
I mean, I was talking about this. So this last thing I was talking about, this software super weapon. This is the company called so-called super weapon. This is Anthropic. They made a particular model, a particular, a statistical reasoning engine called Mythos, and that was an engine that was particularly good at detecting software vulnerabilities, places where a system, a network, for example, could be hacked, right? But again, when they talked about it, they billed it as this thing that's it's a super weapon. It's so dangerous we can't release it. And then they came out later and said, okay, we built guardrails. And then they said, oops, it broke the guardrails. And that was the point. And everyone knows from the headlines, that's the point where, the Trump administration said, hey, you're going to have to shut this down to figure out what's going on. And, when I read about that, when I heard about it in the podcasts we have access to in here, my thought was Silicon Valley types. Like they just keep putting their foot in it. If you say we're looking at all this against a backdrop of this drumbeat of this AI thing. It's coming. It's going to take over everything. The singularity is almost here. These things could be dangerous. The robots are coming. They're going to take over all the jobs. They may take over. They may end the world. They may make us this. There's all this kind of science fiction-y stuff people have been saying, right? And then you say you've built a software super weapon, and then you say whoopsie. And then when the president calls to talk to or the president's team calls to talk to the CEO, he's on a wellness retreat. And then when the Trump administration says, "Okay, you have to shut this down until we, can keep, take stock," then everyone says, "Oh, the Trump administration is, it's terrible. We can't believe that they're so anti-technology." It's like, come on, this is like you did this to yourself. Like, stop it, right? Now, I've not seen or used either Mythos or the less powerful model that they introduced after Mythos. I do understand that these statistical reasoning engines can be very good at finding vulnerabilities and finding ways to exploit them. It makes sense because they're very good. This company's models are very good at generating programs considering working software, right? That could theoretically be dispatched to actually go and hack real systems. But I think that the all the ferment and all the noise and the hysteria and the back and forth and all this, it points to some interesting things. First, that we have this kind of there's the large technology companies that are mostly driving this, right? Because this is not a people hacking in their garage type of thing. You have to have a lot of money, a lot of computers, data centers, what have you. The large technologies that are driving this have a kind of a cultural problem. They have a kind of a cultural. It's kind of a cultural problem, a kind of a tone deafness, a kind of a lack of understanding of how to make a good case for yourself. They also seem to have a kind of a not so hidden contempt for ordinary people and the things ordinary people do and the things that make society work. And they seem to kind of there's a kind of an arrogance in which they want to, like, how can I? Okay, so you remember a few years ago, everyone was saying that, like, self-driving cars were going to put all the truck drivers out of business, right? And everyone thought that was awesome. Everyone was like, "Oh, great, no more truck drivers," And now it turns out that the people whose jobs might be most at jeopardy from these technologies are not truck drivers at all, but they're kind of managerial class people. They're kind of white collar workers, right? And now things have shifted. So I just think this is all very interesting to me. I remain skeptical about most of the big pronouncements about this stuff. I've lived through a few technology bubbles, a few hype cycles, and it's always the case that people say this is gonna change everything, and in reality, it changes some things, but then life goes on, and then people learn to use it, and when the internet started to when the web really started to become a thing, this was like in the mid to late 90s. That was going to change everything. Well, some things, and then later on there was another hype cycle. So e-commerce is going to change everything, and e-commerce and content, whatever. And that bubble burst, and so now we're living through another one of those. There will be real benefits from these technologies. There'll be real downsides, but we're just in the initial stages. And but I think we also, as a country, as a society, we haven't done a good job of really thinking about what the good life is, thinking about what we want. I'm always talking about the proper relationship between the citizen and the state. There's also the relationship between the nation and its industries, and that goes for the software industry as well. And I think it won't do us any harm to really at least start thinking and talking about those things. And to the extent that we have discussions about how much is going to change work itself, well, it won't do us any harm to really stop and think about the nature of work and what work is and why it's important to us. Like, is it just something we have to do? Is it something that kind of partly defines us as human beings? And much depends on the answer. Right? If work is merely something that, like, we have to try to eliminate as soon as possible, we'll come to one set of answers. If work is something that defines us and that helps us kind of become more fully who we are, then that's a different discussion, and we really shouldn't be trying to eliminate it. Right? But also, and I'll end my rant here. I think it's there's something we have to come to terms with, right? There's a kind of I don't know, I can't find the word for it, but it's this idea that, well, the best thing is just not to do anything. Right? That's the right. Don't do, there was a time in American history when people were proud that, when something got built, right? They'd hear about some new process or a new engine or a new machine or a new building or a new factory, and they were like, wow, that's cool. Like, they liked the idea of us building stuff and accomplishing things. And I think among too many Americans, that sentiment is just gone. It's like, oh, they're building stuff. We have to stop that. Oh, they're building too much stuff. And that's, this is, I mean, you might have, what's your top in ranting for a while? Have you noticed that same kind of sentiment, that same kind of, well, let's not build anything. Oh, they're building these things. Stop them. Put a moratorium on it. It's like, no, the power of the water. Have you noticed this kind of sour attitude toward building and toward innovation?
Not here where I am. It seems like
Florida, yes.
it seems like they want to build more. Like, we have more data centers being built here. In fact, here in my local area, there was a kind of like a town hall meeting about this new data center that wants to be built here in the area, and like the residents seem all for it. So not here necessarily, but I can see in like states like New York and maybe California where they may not be really into it, but here in Florida, no.
All the states, is it? I mean, is it? I mean, you got to think, like, is it something about the left wing ideology that there may be?
I know a lot of left wingers don't
want too much prosperity.
I know a lot of left wingers don't like the fact that billionaires are behind these data centers, and how they feel about billionaires and the rich and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anything that they're for, they're against, even if it may benefit them.
Yeah.
Or innovate things for them.
Right.
I mean, these are the same people that hate billionaires, but walking around with iPhones and things.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah, this is fascinating. Yeah, it is. I think it really. Yeah, now that I think about it, sure, because Texas, for example, is definitely all in on data centers. Red states definitely, for the most part, they're all in on it. It's lefties again, and I think that's to me, that may, as I think about it now, that may be that's a scenario on the left, right? I think it's also an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity for a new generation of conservatives, right, who are tech savvy, who understand this stuff, to go around and talk to people. Oh, hey, listen, this is how the world has changed, and this is how you can prosper. I think there should be a lot more conservatives trying to encourage young people not to go to college. I think that should be much more of a thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, listen, if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an architect, you got to go to college. But if you're just wondering what to do next, maybe look at trade school. Maybe figure out how to make a living first, and then go and study your past, 13th century poetry or what have you. But don't just jump into college and rack up all this debt and then have all this anxiety and then I think it comes down to things are getting more interesting, and because of this particular new technology, the economic landscape, what have you. This is a chance, or should be a chance, for conservatives to kind of talk about a vision of the future. If the only vision of the future is this kind of, that's really it. I think I'm kind of talking my way through it right out loud. It's like, if we know that lefties have this vision of the future that's mostly bleak, right? It's like planet is burning up and everything's bad, and human beings are terrible and they're almost like a disease. And and the problem is that no one is coming out with a vision, with an opposing vision that's not purely materialistic. Right? Because again, these socialists, these democratic socialists running for these offices and have these materialists. They'll tell you they're historical materialists, right? It's baked to the cake with them. You're going to fight them, then it won't do to be a materialist as well. A materialist arguments will not suffice. You have to have, something better, some kind of more noble vision than just, we'll have more stuff. That's not good enough. And I think that's lacking. And I don't think that's necessarily even a job for the president. I think that's a job for the grassroots. There are enough of the guys out there, I should say, who understand this stuff. And it would be good at articulating a kind of a vision that's not just think about how much anxiety has been inflicted on young people since the great viral freakout, and who's telling them to be afraid of everything, right? Be afraid of everything. Be afraid of electricity. Be afraid of cars. Be afraid of energy. Be afraid of the air. Be afraid of other people. Just be afraid of everything. I don't know. I think if I think if there's really going to be an American conservative revolution, way of the name, it has to start. Maybe it has to start not with a call to action, but with a call to courage. So anyway, that's my rant on, AI and the rest of it.
So let me ask you a quick question about AI. In terms of elections, do you think that conservatives should utilize more AI technology when it comes to campaigning?
How? That's like asking, should they use more? Should they use Google more when they're campaigning? I mean, it's a tool, right? So if you
maybe for outreach, we discussed outreach today, right? Can they use AI for outreach?
Well, they don't. It's not. This is not an AI. It's not necessarily an AI problem. There may be some dimension of the to which large language models are amenable, but I don't really see it. Look, what is outreach? You're going places and talking to people, right? And really, what you need, I think, what you need is not a large language model. You need someone who's good at talking to people. Maybe several someones who are good at talking to people. you know, and they need to go somewhere. They need to make the appointments, make the phone calls, go somewhere and actually talk to those people. That's not an AI problem. You see what I'm saying? Like, you know, when it comes to look, your Trump team probably used something like so-called AI or some tools related to it, right? To do sentiment analysis and to use kind of, you know, consumer metadata on these commercial databases to figure out people's buying patterns and those patterns. This person probably aligns with the values, even though they wouldn't call them, even though they're not like active in elections or they're not registered. Let's go talk to them, right? That's that kind of analysis. Yes, I mean, people use so-called AI techniques now to do that kind of analysis. But question from the outreach piece. The outreach piece requires people to actually be willing to go and talk to people, to make connections, to make friends. You know, to say, hey, I think you might be ready to hear this message from us. That's not an act of computation. That's an act of imagination, right? This neighborhood in New York City called Bedford-Stuyvesant, and there are a lot of black homeowners in Bedford-Stuyvesant. So they're probably ready to hear a message about smaller government. Because you know, to be a homeowner in New York is to have the city and the state always have its hand out and trying to get this or that fees from you. You know what I'm saying? Like that's an act of imagination. There's to be computed there. There's nothing to be. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not trying to auto-generate some document based on having scraped the entire internet. That's not what. No. Like, oh yeah. These people, you know, okay, you know, there's a bunch of immigrants from the Caribbean, and we know that, you know, they you know, they have these habits and they're like this and they're fanatical about education and what have you. So yeah, let's go and talk to them because they may be ready to hear a conservative message about schools and school choice and so on and so forth. Right. Yeah. So that's what I would say is that, you know, if you're trying to analyze, trying to figure out whether there's a population of people whose buying preferences, taken in the aggregate, point to a conservative sentiment. So-called AI tools. I mean, numerical analysis. Really, it's not. I don't want to overblow it. It's just. You know, you're doing statistics and linear algebra is what you're doing. Before ChatGPT really went platinum, there were all kind of excellent tools that conservatives could have used to better their outreach, and they just did not use them. And
do you think it's because they didn't understand it, or they just was lazy about it?
You understand what outreach?
No, how to use the technology.
Well, I mean, again, you know, what technology? It's like, do you know, the question before we get to the technology, the question is, are you a conservative who still talks that shit about forgetting about the cities? You know what I'm saying? Like, how much do you know about the people who live in cities? How much do you know about the history of Black folks? I mean, you know, the same conservatives who will tell me that Black folks used to vote Republican, which is true, right, seem not to be able to get it into their heads that, well, maybe still a conservative message that resonate with working with blue collar. So conservatives seem not to think that blue collar Black people exist, right? You know, they seem not to realize that, yeah, there's a ton of blue, like Black electricians and carpenters and iron workers and plumbers and what have you, steam fitters, that, like, they're out there. Like, do you need AI for that? Well, no. What you need is interest, right, and curiosity. That's what I think it is. Yeah, It is not a failure of technology. It is a failure of curiosity, first and foremost. Where are these people? Why are these people not with us? Why do they say they're not with us? Why are they socially maybe for a long time voters are socially conservative but fiscally liberal, which really doesn't make any sense. Because no individual voter is liberal when it comes to their paycheck.
Nope.
More money. There's no voter. Excuse me. There's no voter who says, I'd like to take home less money. I'd like more of my paycheck to be spent on taxes. No one. But people used to say, Republicans used to say, hey, black voters are socially conservative. And yeah. So take the next step as well. Go and talk to them about conservative ideas. There's a failure of curiosity. That is not a technology problem. Once people decide that they're going to engage with voters in the cities and that they're going to engage with these urban problems as failure of what it is, not just of left politicians all day, but people who have for Democrats, I'm not going to go after them because I don't know yet why they voted Democrat. I have to talk to them. I have to ask them. Right? And in any case, if I want to change their mind, I'm not going to start off by insulting them. So, the first to fix the lack of curiosity problem, the lack of drive, the lack of fight in conservatives, the lack of balls in conservatives. Fix first. Then, when you're putting together as a tactical matter, when you say, okay, here's how we're going to do this and this and this, we're going to figure out, our canvassing routes and our this. You can use all that to do that. But to end working class voters on that level, this has to come from people. And that has to be a decision that is driven by curiosity and a sense of solidarity and a desire to win, desire to see America win, not just see the red states win, but to see all of us win. Right? Asking from a knowledge that it is liberal politicians who've been driving these cities into the ground. And by the way, many of these Democrats do not run clean elections. So we say, well, these people have voted for, first of all, you haven't read the turnout numbers. And second, do you really believe Democrats run clean elections in Chicago? Stupid. If not, then stop using that argument and just go talk to people who are, Chicago's an example. Do I need AI to know that black folks in Chicago are spitting mad at Brandon Johnson? I didn't know that. No. Black people in Chicago are spitting mad at Brandon Johnson. Now the question is, are you going to that is a weakness. That is a weakness on the part of Chicago Democrats. Who is exploiting that weakness and how? That is the question. And none of these are technological questions. None of them. And remember, I'm a technology guy. But at a certain age, you get to be smart enough to understand when your tool is when your chosen tool set is not the tool set required for a particular problem. This is not primarily a technology problem. This is a failure of imagination, failure of curiosity, a conservatism on the part of many of our brethren. We fix that, everything else will follow. But we have to fix that first.
I think, on the conservative front, I think heart, we like the heart to compete in these areas where we're saying that is unwinnable. I think once we fix that, sky's the limit for what we can accomplish as conservatives. But, you know, we got to have the heart first.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So we got
Got to have the heart.
about this is the last minute.
Yeah, we got
Anything you want to say to the
no time
people
left.
before we sign off for the night?
Whoever's listening, sure. Only listening. God bless you. Have a good night. And thank you, brother, for making this happen. It is always good to get on and chop it up with you.
You have 1 minute left.
And there she is, our favorite Democrat.
Yeah. I mean, there's no need to thank me. I appreciate you letting me do this, and I appreciate the listeners for letting us bring you this great program to you.
And we're going to be back next week. And we're going to continue. All right. So, night to you, brother. Good night to our listeners. And catch you later.
All right, man. You have a good night.
All right.
All right, everybody. Thank you for stopping by and listening to the Hidden Path with Carbon Mike. I am your producer and co-host, your smartass Carl. We do appreciate you listening with us. So if you don't mind, please share the program with other people. We're trying to grow it. We're still very, very, very small, but we're trying to become big. So if you don't mind sharing it with people who may find this type of content enjoyable, I will gladly appreciate it. Anyways, y'all have a good night. We'll see you next week on The Hidden Path with Carbon Mike.